Jay Mazer.
All right, thank you, Jay.
OC.
OC
Thank you,
Canada.
I'm here. Yeah.
And 4 of our 5 guest speakers are with us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 9 committee members. 5 of us are present. Technically, we do have a quorum. That's good. But it would be nice to have maybe a couple of more people. So we'll give it a few more minutes.
Yeah, Steve, and also the buses and the subways, masks no longer required.
Right, yeah, that was a,
Not that anybody was abiding by it anyway, but
well, I think there
it
was
just
still,
makes it harder.
yeah, there was still a fair number of people, and I think many of those people will, such as myself, will continue to wear a mask to protect themselves.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. It's beyond unfortunate. That may cause more people's lives. And just that people are so like, just egoists, thinking about themselves, not realizing it's just insane. It's just, well, it's not insane. That's the reality, but it's insane that the MTA no longer require that. That's really bad.
Yeah, it is. I don't know what the reasoning was behind that. I don't understand.
Okay, okay. Diane has now joined us. All of our guest speakers are now with us.
I think the ban on masks by the MTA was caused by the fact that this is an election year. And I think Hochul thought this takes an issue away from our conservative Republican opponent. I don't think it had anything to do with medicine or science.
I would agree.
Even at the School of Public Health where I teach, it is up to you whether you want to wear them. And it's nuts. A School of Public Health that doesn't say just wear them. It seems nuts.
Very inconsiderate. That's, I mean, I'm just shocked that people don't, it just, I guess the people that understand that most are the ones that have pre-existing conditions that, they're going to have to wear masks like for who knows how many more years. But I think, is it still like 5% chance to get the virus if only one side is wearing the mask, and it's only 1% if both people that speaking to each other wear the mask? I forgot, there is less statistics I remember from maybe 2 years ago, but
Yeah.
That need to be, people need to be reminded they're not walking alone, they're not getting on the subway and get on, they're not sitting alone on a subway in a car, and it's just it's just I'm not sure what to make of it, but it's terrible.
I think it's really disgusting that the governments in the United States at all levels are willing to accept as a normal condition that several hundred Americans die every day from the still existing pandemic. And I think the ending of the mask requirements will contribute further to the death of more people. And what's it going to be like when the weather gets cold? We all know viruses love cold weather.
Well, Jay, I think it all started with taking responsibility for controlling pandemics and epidemics, et cetera, away from the health department and putting it into hospitals and HHC. That was a misguided decision. We had the expertise and
Sally, we can hardly hear you, so you know. You can bump up the volume. We heard you, but it was very, very low volume, if you can bump it up.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
It's unusual that we should ask Sally to bump it up.
Why, she never yelled.
But you always know where she stands and what she's saying.
Right.
All right, well, I think we're going to get started at 6:40. I was preparing to welcome our two new committee members, but they haven't joined us yet. So hopefully I'll be able to welcome them later on during the meeting. So we do have a quorum, and we are once again still going to be discussing to a great extent the COVID-19 pandemic, because the pandemic is still with us. And let me just reinforce that point. Since we last met 3 months ago on June 2nd, there have been 7,230 additional cases of COVID-19 in our 4 zip codes. So since the beginning of the pandemic, a total of 57,636. And since we last met, 23 more of our neighbors have passed away because of COVID-19, for a total now of 946 people who have died in our 4 zip codes. The positivity rates for the week ending September the 5th, the lowest positivity rate was in zip code 32 at 7.84, 37 cases last week. In zip code 33, 7.91, 42 new cases. In zip code 40, 11.44%, 43 new cases. And in zip code 34, 10.54, 31 new cases. And those are pretty high positivity rates. And we've had, at the low point during the pandemic, I believe it was down to 2 or 3%. We're still running fairly high. And I'm sorry to say that our vaccination rates, since we last looked at them 3 months ago, have not really improved to a great extent. We're still hovering between 78 and 83% on people who have received just 1 dose. People who have completed the primary vaccinations, still around 70, 74% is the highest for zip code 32. And the boosters, people going and getting their booster shots, it's incredibly low. It's about half of the people who have been fully vaccinated, at around 34% in all 4 zip codes. And of course, this is way below the rest of the city. The rest of the city is at 89% for 1 dose, 80% for people fully vaccinated, and 40% for people who have received boosters. Manhattan, I don't know how Manhattan could be so high, since we're holding them back, but Manhattan as a whole, 99% of Manhattan residents have had at least 1 dose, 85% fully vaccinated, and 50% have received boosters. So that's where we stand. And for those who think the pandemic is over, I would caution you against reaching that conclusion, based on the fact we're still getting a large number of new cases and people are still dying.
And Steve, I had COVID too.
And you had COVID, well.
Since we last met.
Yeah.
So Just saying, like it's there, it's happening. So,
But you're okay now.
and I'm vaxxed, I'm boosted, and wear a mask. Yeah, I'm fine now, but
All right. Well, we're glad you've recovered. And
Steve, can we, I don't know if no, we can't get it probably. Do we know specifically, where are people from in terms of vaccine? Where are they coming? What streets they're coming from? So
No.
maybe we can find, we don't know that, right?
no, there's
Because-
that would be hyper specific. Well, we only have information based on zip codes.
Right, but my point is, if we know, let's say that there is one street that there are more people vaccinated, and there is another one that only, I don't know, 10% of people got vaccinated, this is where the bus need to go.
Yeah. No, I
So-
agree. It would be great to have that level of information. And I wish we had a much more aggressive outreach campaign so that maybe we could identify those parts of the community where we're having problems convincing people to be vaccinated.
Are you saying that the Department of Health does not have that data?
Not that I know of. I'm above
Because
Pauline.
you have to show your ID when you come to get vaccinated, right?
Well, I know, but Pauline, can you respond to that question?
Hi, everyone. Hi, OC. So I believe that the data is broken down by zip code at the at that level. So we can't go block by block. It just is not possible. But I totally understand what you're saying, that, we should target, boosters and vaccines to locations where people are traditionally not getting them. And that's something that we have been trying to be better about. But as you know, throughout the pandemic and currently, Washington Heights has been very difficult for, our teams to get vaccines to, and also there has been, resistance in certain pockets of the city. And so trying to balance that, right? Like if we send a mobile van somewhere, but no one is taking the vaccine, it just doesn't seem like a good use of anyone's time. But again, it's important for us to do better work around educating and encouraging people to get vaccinated. So it's something that we need to sort of work on, finding what the proper balance is and what we need to be better at doing.
Do you know if schools
I'm sorry,
required?
OC, can we defer this until we get to Pauline's report?
Oh, no
'cause I-
problem.
Sorry.
Sure.
I'll be here all night.
Yeah, all
Okay.
night. Yeah, Pauline never leaves. And because I feel bad, we've already held up our guest speaker. So our guest speaker is David Rosner, co-director of the Center for the History and Ethics of Public Health at the Mailman School of Public Health and the Department of History at Columbia University. I'm very glad that he was able to join us tonight. I just want to mention that I first became aware of Professor Rosner when I read an article in The Guardian back in May, which begins by saying that David Rosner continually talks to colleagues who are distraught about the American response to the COVID-19 pandemic. A quote, "When you are in the School of Public Health and a public health environment, people really feel when they are failing," said Rosner, who studies public health and social history at the Columbia University Mailman School of Public Health. And a few paragraphs down, it says, "This is more than just a failure of a health system," said Rosner. "It is a failure of an American ideology." So my interest was piqued by these quotes. And I decided to reach out to him and see if by any chance he would be willing to talk to us and maybe elaborate further on what on his reflections about on the pandemic. So tonight's talk is entitled "Historical Reflections on Our Response to the COVID-19 Pandemic." And I'm very pleased to be able to turn the, well, we don't have a podium. We don't have a mic. I'm turning the screen over to Professor Rosner. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction. And I'm glad somebody read that article. I thought it was kind of an interesting article in general. Can you all hear me, or am I?
No, you're doing fine.
Yeah, okay. Now, I wasn't quite sure the format of the whole talk. So needless to say, being a academic, I wrote out a paper and put out a PowerPoint. And obviously this is much more informal than.
But we accept PowerPoints if you want to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe I'll show you a little bit as I get into it. But
Okay.
the first thing I wanted to do is probably my biggest qualifications, not the books I've written or the articles I've written, but probably that I grew up in zip code 10032. Okay. I grew up at least a few years of my life when I went to City College at 900 Riverside Drive. If anybody knows the area, 161st and
Oh,
Riverside.
sure. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So-
I live a few blocks away.
Oh, really? Okay. So you know the area, and I knew it. I thought I knew it also until I actually reintroduced myself to Columbia when I got my job here.
What was there a bodega on the ground floor of the building when you were there?
Got it. Right at the corner of the ground floor. Went down there often.
Yeah, still there.
Yeah, it's still there. I just very briefly, I moved to that neighborhood just as it was going through a very major transition. From a community that was kind of bifurcated by Broadway between a very large incoming Dominican population and my side, which was basically my grandmothers and grandfathers and, older Jewish population that used to hang out with plastic chairs in front of the building. And it was an interesting moment to be there because I saw a lot of the inequities, and I felt a lot of the inequities. One of my first memories of the area was when I was walking down the street and a woman collapsed and went into an epileptic fit. It was basically going through a seizure on the street. And my first impulse was try to figure out what to do. I was 16 at the time. And my thought was I better get some medical care. So I quickly ran upstairs and called Columbia Presbyterian. And this is really my origin of my love-hate relationship with the institution. Columbia Presbyterian, and asked for an ambulance. I mean, just said, we need somebody here. And I was put on hold. I was asked for her insurance information. I didn't know who she was. I said, this is not a question of insurance. She needs somebody here now to get an ambulance. I walked up there. I knew there was an emergency ambulance there. Nothing happened. Luckily, she came out of the experience and she ultimately walked away. But it was really my first real experience with Columbia, which I think many people in my community, in that community at the time, saw as basically a giant isolated institution at 168 that had very little to do with what was going on in the community at that moment, as it went through kind of social changes, went through economic changes that were having a very devastating effect both on the on the school system, on the segregated school system, essentially, where one school was basically all Dominican and African-American and Hispanic, and another school that was largely white, and it was like separated by a few blocks. So it was kind of my, birthright into this community that I've had this relationship with over the years. I thought, I was trying to figure out how to address in just a few minutes the questions. I don't know how much time you want and have, or want me to spiel on, but
Okay, keep going. You're doing fine.
Yeah, of the question of why there has been a low vaccination rate in this community. Okay. And the reason I told you that story is, in some sense, part of the structural and historical basis for a kind of distrust for the medical community that I felt ever since I was a kid. Okay. And it's a distrust that's rooted both in history, both in the specific history, I think, of the neighborhood, but also in the longer history of healthcare in general, and how it has treated both immigrant populations, how it's treated minorities, and how it's addressed the question, which is really the focus of this book I'm writing, which is called Building the Worlds That Kill Us. and of who's going to live and who's going to die during an epidemic. It's not just a question of large numbers, as we talked about the zip code problem. It's not just a question of how many people die, but it's also a question of who is more asked to bear the burden of death and destruction during periods of ill health. I'm not sure whether I'm making much sense, but what I'm trying to get across is that we have historically in our health system, in our social system, basically been built around various inequalities and inequities, whether they just be economic, but also social and political, and also in terms of health. One of the great unfortunate facts of life, okay, or facts of death, I should say, is that historically, when you look at an epidemic when it hits, you can almost predict what groups are going to bear the burdens of that epidemic the most, okay, whether it's in the 18th, 19th, 20th, or 21st century. Those who are going to bear the burden of in terms of death and disease and basically, bear the burden of the most deaths are going to be those who are either new immigrants, who are poor, who are people of color, whether it be Hispanic or Black, Dominican, whatever. And that you can almost look historically and see that transition through virtually every immigration group that has come to this country, okay? I thought I would start out, I don't know whether you're willing to, again, I have no idea how long you want me to spiel. I mean, like, is this 10 minutes or 20 minutes or?
Yeah, you go 20 minutes, yeah.
20 minutes, okay. Do you mind if I share a screen and just go through a few PowerPoints? Just
Please do feel free.
And this is really, drawn from a collection from my lectures at Columbia of literally hundreds of these things. So these are just examples.
Okay, well, if we can get the benefit of one of your lectures without having to pay any tuition fees, that's a bonus. That's good.
You've learned a basic principle about Columbia University. You can get anything you want if you can pay for it, okay? You get nothing if you don't. Okay, so I'm going to try to share my screen if I can figure out how to do this, okay? And then you can tell me whether it works. Can you see? Okay, can you see this screen now?
Yes.
Okay. This is basically just going back into the 19th century, and I've got to sweep through the 19th century. The 19th century was a period of enormous death rates from various kinds of infectious disease. For those of you who are from New York, you think you live in a crowded city now, think about what's going on in the 19th century. In 1800, the beginning of that century, there were approximately 35,000 people in the entire city, okay? Probably if you went onto the top of one of your buildings and looked out around you, you'd see 35,000 people in a 4 or 5 square block area, okay? By 1900, maybe I could just ask you, by 1900, if the city grew, does anybody have any sense of the size of New York City by 1900? There are 35,000 in 1800, 10 decades later, 10 centuries later. Anybody have a guess or willing to guess as to?
I would say it's about 3 million.
Oh, Jay, you ruined my whole talk. Okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, it's more like it's closer to 4
Hey,
million.
you're my hero.
Yeah, Jay, you must remember the neighborhood from when you were a kid too. I mean,
Yes.
He counted them all.
Yeah, there were close to four and a quarter million people in the city. Most of those people were jammed below 57th Street and the Wall Street area. They're all located there, okay? That was because there was no subway system. There was no mass transit of any kind, no bus system. The way if you wanted to get to work, you basically had to walk there. In that small area, I'm just painting a picture of why infectious diseases became a really big problem then. in that small area, there were approximately 200,000 horses between the edge of Central Park, the southern edge of Central Park, where the city basically ended, right? And Wall Street, there were about 200,000 horses. And a basic public health fact, just to give you a sense of the place, is that each horse gives off about 25 pounds of manure a day and a couple of quarts of urine, okay? In a city without a central government, without any city services, this was a city that was absolutely filthy. Okay, you got a sense of it. So infectious diseases were the way, it was the kind of the symbolic embodiment of the world we had built in the 19th century, where a disease came in, swept through communities, went through tenements that were jammed with new immigrants that had just come over, where there was no running water in most of the city, where the aqueduct system was still being built from the Catskills, where there was there were no flush toilets. You went to the backyard to an outhouse where you went and did your duty. And you basically lived in this world that was built without government. It was built without any kind of organized system of infrastructure that could help the new immigrants, okay? There are literally hundreds of thousands of immigrants coming over every year, probably over 1 million every decade, but hundreds of thousands every decade or two, every year or two. So that was the situation. And this is the world in which cholera, a disease that was a waterborne disease, swept through communities, okay? There were no technologies to deal with it. We didn't have large-scale vaccination except for a few very specific diseases. One, you had, at the beginning of the century, you started seeing the development of vaccination, okay? And you started seeing the uses of diphtheria antitoxin at the end of the century. But basically, there are very few kind of technologies to deal with the disease, which is one of the issues that we kind of that we've traditionally dealt with big social problems. I mean, the city was disintegrating because of a huge social problem it had. And one of the answers to it was to try to find technologies that would not basically disrupt the city, disrupt the social order, disrupt the system by which some people profited and some people died, but a technological fix that would address the immediate threat to the city, which was infections that were spreading rapidly among crowded areas of immigrants, and even going into the homes of the wealthy, where those immigrants often worked as day workers, as launderers, as cleaners, as delivery people. I say that only because if you look at the world today, when we had the COVID epidemic at its height, we had a similar situation where some of us, and here unfortunately, well, fortunately for me, but unfortunately in terms of the way I see the world, we're capable of, in some sense, protecting ourselves. I actually have a summer home where I went for basically 2 years, off and on for major portions of time, and could live a relatively normal life, isolated with my wife and my family, and pretty much protected from the onslaught of this disease. But every night when I was in the city, I heard a symbol of the fact that not everybody was living like that. Okay, you all probably remember the 7 o'clock beating of the pans outside your window. And those were to thank the people who we knew, we knew were being affected and whose lives were being reshaped by this epidemic. Okay, probably, I always felt guilty. I went out and banged my pants to thank the essential workers, but who were the essential workers? Were basically largely minority peoples, people of color, often, and also and a lot of professionals. I shouldn't put them out of the way. Very hardworking physicians and nurses. But basically, we were talking to the people who were delivering our food, were coming in contact with up to 20 to 30 people a day, and who were often being exposed to disease on their job and had no alternative of going to a summer home or to a country place or to have deliveries made to their home um, while still receiving a salary, in my case, from the university. So, any case, I just want to show you some of these these slideshow, and we'll kind of get to this. Okay, so this is the slideshow. You can see this, right? Okay.
Yes.
This is just one of the examples of one of the first epidemics that really struck the city, which is cholera, which was born by poor water, people who had to go to work. It causes a kind of massive dysentery, massive diarrhea that killed you literally in a matter of hours, dehydrated you. And here's just to kind of give you a sense of what the 19th century looked like, which was all these peaks of various kinds of infectious diseases. You know, smallpox, measles, diphtheria, smallpox again, cholera, smallpox, diphtheria, typhus, cholera. If you notice that throughout the 19th century, we had these massive outbreaks of disease that basically killed thousands upon thousands of people, tuberculosis being the most important of that time. And then after around 1900, we start seeing this decline. This is a period when public health essentially went into action, not to just change people's behavior, okay, but literally to put in place the infrastructure that would protect us from disease. This is when the water system began to come in, the aqueduct water system, which brought water from the Catskills. Think about that. You know, think about this. 100 miles of piping that virtually began to be introduced into virtually every house in the city. Sally, you had something. Sorry, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to make the point that in terms of essential workers, Inwood, Washington Heights had the 4th highest concentration in the city. So it's essentially, we were sending people off to take care of us, then to come home and not be taken care of.
That's right. You're getting to the kind of, I'm trying to paint the big picture of, I don't know enough about contemporary, District 12, okay? But that's the point I'm hoping that you folks will get out of this and see if it applies, okay? That essentially you're the center of a community that was basically picked out to bear disease, the risks of the COVID epidemic. And that's the way I see it from my cynical perspective as a historian. But in the 19th century, these epidemics were not just affecting specific groups that we targeted in some sense, but they were affecting the life of the city. They were threatening the very economic well-being organization of the city. And you saw the decisions by our politicians and by our professionals to make a massive investment, not just to protect certain groups, because you couldn't really protect them. There were no antibiotics, there were no vaccinations, there were no means of isolating people from one another in this jammed area that was Lower Manhattan. We had to do something in order to protect, from my perspective, the economic center that New York City was becoming. It could not possibly survive as a major economic center as it had become, a major commercial port, the center of the financial industry, the center of the printing industry, the center of 1,000 smaller industries that were emerging, all of which depended upon the Port of New York to get its products from the West, from the Midwest, through the canal system, through the Great Lakes, through the Erie Canal, down the Hudson River, and out to Europe. New York was emerging as this major metropolis based upon the fact of its location and the fact that it had enormous access through the Erie Canal, through the Great Lakes, all the way to Duluth, Minnesota. They could get goods from the Midwest and West, from the ore mining districts and from the cattle growing districts and everything else, all the way by water, all the way down to the city and out to the rest of the world. And that was emerging as a major reality of New York City. And to have infectious disease basically threaten that reality as commercial enterprises decided not to move here, or that people would not invest their money in the city, was a kind of threat that led to a massive investment. And we were talking about the infrastructure bill. We love it. But think about what it meant to decide to build an aqueduct system that would come from 100 miles away up in the Catskills, all the way across rivers, through reservoirs that we were building, through, right near here. I mean, I think maybe even District 12, that bridge that goes across the river next to, that has that long, tall bell tower. It's a water pump. It was a water pump system of the original aqueduct system, bringing water all the way into the city through pipes under every street, into virtually every apartment in this massive city. I mean, think about the investment that went into that alone. Think about the investment of cleaning up the city, that in which in any given year, without a sanitation department, what's 25 times 200,000 times 365? Anybody have a calculator? It's a lot. It's a lot of horse manure that was dumped on the city, on the streets. I have some films. I'm not going to bore you with them, but this is what led to the first kind of massive reduction, this decision that these diseases were affecting all of us, and therefore we had to do something for all the population. Okay? Think of the differences in circumstances now where at least some of us were able to protect ourselves largely, disproportionately over others who could not. Is this boring, everyone? Am I being too academic? No, it's all right. Okay.
I love it.
Okay, well, okay, hopefully, give me reinforcement once in a while, otherwise I'll stop. But again, this is just a picture of the housing conditions that existed before the tenement laws came in which here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people living in a tenement room that was about 12 by 10, okay? Virtually nowhere. Think about the various vermin that were spreading disease, the lice, the ticks. Think about the lack of air, the tuberculosis that was being spread. These rooms essentially could house as many as 24 people in one day, okay? Because you had shifts, people lived in shifts. They came here, they slept, they went out after 8 hours, they were kicked out, all for a nickel a night, okay? And that's how people lived. This is just a picture of one of the streets. This actually, I was looking for one for this area, but this area really hadn't been built by this point. This is down the village. This, I think, is Barrow Street. This is the horse manure that's accumulating there. This is a picture of visiting nurses visiting some of the tenements where cholera was breaking out. And you can look over here, and what you can see is what the city's streets looked like. This was a photo for them, so they actually cleaned off the streets in front of the visiting nurses. And this was the manure in the street. I found another picture of this wagon that was literally, its wheels were encrusted with horse manure, it couldn't move. Okay. You may ask, I mean, just think about, again, I'm getting into the minutiae, I didn't mean to, but we all seen these, right? These stoops. Those of us who live on below 110th Street know that every street is of brownstones, and we've all seen them, we all know them. The one characteristic of the brownstone we all recognize is the steep stairway that leads to the entrance to the brownstone. That was because during the average year, a city street would rise between 2 and 4 feet because of the horse manure, which meant that this whole area would be covered with horse manure. And dead animals, and to get really specific about it, human waste, because most people did not go out to the backyard to go into the outhouse. There was a period in every morning when what was called night soil, which was the material that you put in these big chamber pots during the night. You didn't go out if you woke up in the middle of the night. You didn't go into the cold. You went to a chamber pot that was next to your room or next to your bed, and in the morning you threw it out the window. It's hard to imagine. The origins of the parasol, which was really the young lady's symbol of protection from what might come out the window at any particular time from the fourth floor of the tenement. The man who walked on the side of the curb. There are all sorts of manners that developed in response to this disintegrating world. Manners, a man who walked along the curb, who ultimately, this manner said was because they were worried about the horses coming by and splashing, when in fact it was because if you didn't get your chamber pot thrown out to the street, it might land it would land on whoever was closest to the curb. Men with big bowler hats that also gave a form of protection. These customs developed in light of this world that was evolving. But enough of this, okay. How was disease explained? We could explain disease as a product either of a world we have created, a world we have built in which sanitation and housing and people were being exploited because of the needs of an economic system that had essentially developed around their labor, but not necessarily around them. And a lot of the early ideas about what microbes and viruses were about, viral diseases were about, were built around the fact of the idea, not of the structures we had not provided, not of the pure water we had not provided, but of the people themselves who didn't have the habits or have the knowledge or have the information or have the hereditary background or have the culture to keep themselves clean. Okay. If you look at these are some illustrations. I picked out a couple. This is an explanation for cholera, a chance for the cholera. This is one of New York's microbes, right? There were microscopes, that was a problem. It was the new immigrant. This is, those of you who look at it and know any of these symbols, you see he's a poor person with a corn cob pipe, right? A stick. These are dead giveaways of a certain ethnic group. You can't really tell, but if it was a better image. Oh yeah, look at the hat. What kind of hat is that? Does anybody know that style hat? Patrick Moynihan used to wear them all the time. Okay, it's cork pie hats, right? He was the new immigrant. He was the new microbe, right? Who was transporting these diseases on his back into the city. He was the new immigrant. He was Irish. Okay, that was the first group that was blamed. The Irish newcomer, the Irish immigrant. Right. Does anybody see that? Or is that kind of clear? Yeah. Here's another one for the next generation. Here again is the giveaways: the hat, plaid pants, right? The walking stick. These are all symbols of the new Irish, as the cartoonists generally depicted. And here he was. This is again the Cholera Scare, and here it is. Who's the Cholera Scare? Who are you scared of here? The Irish and Jewish immigrant. Right? You look at the bottom. My grandmother could have better read this better, but this is stereotypical Jewish accent. Rag picker, selling diseases and dealing with diseases, saying, "Hey there, you should stop and pay for the Egyptian rags. 50 cents a bunch, ain't it?" Again, who was bringing the disease? Was it the fact that we had this economic system that was stuffing people into certain housing, without support, or was it them themselves who were at risk? This is a contradiction, kind of fundamental tension in the public health system, even to this day. Do you look at disease as a product of a world that we have built, rather physically, and the world we have created as a people, or do we blame it on the victims themselves, the new immigrants, the new people who are depicted as criminals, as filthy, as dirty, right? Here's another, and I'll stop after this. I have hundreds of these at home. This again, the home of the microbes, right? What's the home? It's these piles of manure, unkempt children who are being unsupervised, playing in that manure, and parents who are largely standing by, talking to each other, not doing what they should be doing, which is caring for the kids. And who are they? Shamrock Shades, Sligo's Wine and Liquors, O'Casey, again, the Irish. That was the first major immigrant that got blamed for the problems. Children all over. I mean, they had large families, and that was held against them. You get my point about these things. I just want to point very briefly, and I'm not going to tell you much about it, but I wrote a book about hospitals, on the history of the hospital, which originally started out in the early mid-19th century as basically community-based institutions, believe it or not. Every ethnic group that came over, there would be the Mount Sinai for the Jews, Beth Israel for the Jews, St. Patrick's or St. Vincent's down the village for the Irish, Irish Catholics, Presbyterian for the older classes, the Presbyterian groups. This is the original Presbyterian hospital. If you notice, the hospital was often kind of seen as a moral institution. If you didn't know this was a hospital, you might mistake this for a cathedral of some sort, right? They were institutions that were built around the growing crises of each particular population group that came over. You can almost map New York by looking at the location, map the immigration patterns of New York by looking at the names of the hospital. Go to Brooklyn, you'll see Lebanon Hospital. You'll see Lutheran Hospital. You'll see Lebanon Hospital. You'll see St. Mary's. You'll see, just think about the names of the hospitals and some sense as a history of immigration in the city, because that was the only institution that would take particular groups. The hospital is not necessarily a friendly place. This is a picture of the public hospital. Private hospitals were meant for the worthy poor, those people who could be salvaged by the goodwill of good people who would voluntarily give to them. Public hospitals were often depicted and set up for the unworthy, the young woman who was pregnant out of wedlock, but who was pregnant more than once. Catholic Charities would set up maternity hospitals that were largely hospitals for women giving birth, the first time out of wedlock. They were in need of redemption, and they could get it through the hospital, which was close to the church's teachings. Those who were not worthy, who had gotten pregnant twice, for example, or who had a stigmatized disease like syphilis, gonorrhea, or alcoholism, or diabetes, or alcoholism, or other diseases that were seen as kind of stigmatizing them as having a moral failing that could not be remedied easily, would go to the public hospital. This is an image of Bellevue as it was portrayed, with rats running over the patients. I just want to show you this. It's a little later, but rife within this whole system were sets of moral judgments, essentially from a public health perspective, about who would live and who would die. I just picked out this because I was looking for something quick. I wrote a book about lead poisoning, which is a big problem still. It was a major problem in the 50s. And this is just how lead poisoning was viewed by some elites. Children were being poisoned, were being identified, and they didn't know what to do about it. And what they saw, the industry saw that lead poisoning was, all the information that was coming out about lead poisoning was adverse publicity for the industry. The basic solution is to get rid of our slums. This is one of the letters that was being written. A structural reason, the equivalent of essentially putting in a water system to stop cholera, right? Investing in the infrastructure, getting bad housing out of people's way. That was an enormously expensive thing. But even Uncle Sam can't seem to swing that way. Next importance is to educate the parents. But most of the cases are a Negro and Puerto Rican family, and how does one tackle that job? So they turned to education, ostensibly education, which was essentially saying they'd given up on trying to do something about it. And they were essentially blaming the Black and Puerto Rican families in the 1950s, the same period when the Dominican population was beginning to come to the city. They couldn't do that. Okay, I'm sorry. This is all stuff that I kind of interested in. What happens to those old charity hospitals that are set up by communities? Very briefly, they start seeing themselves less as charities for the poor and more as operations built around money. Jay, I'm sorry, I see your hands up. Jay, do you want to say something? I'm going on too long. I'm really going.
Just a slight digression, but I think it's related to this. In the United States, until the 1920 census, the majority of physicians were self-credentialed. That is, they didn't have a medical school education. I don't know if this was also in general true in New York City in this period.
Yeah, I've written about, I'm really old. I've written a lot. I've been working on this stuff for a long time. And one of my first articles was about the structure of medical education in the years between 1880 and 1920. And one of the big reforms that's often pointed to as a high point in medical education history is the fact that licensure was put in during this period of time, and also a report called the Flexner Report was written very quickly. Both of these were meant to try to solidify certain power elites within the medical profession, okay? You're absolutely right. In the 19th century, there were a slew of practitioners who called themselves doctors. They came from a slew of different medical schools. They sometimes were trained as horseback physicians, followed an apprenticeship system. They could all use the term doctor. You hung out a shingle if you felt you had a principle and you could call yourself a doctor. That was often looked upon as a very chaotic and horrible system. In fact, it also produced huge numbers of women physicians and minority physicians, Black physicians. There were seven all-women medical colleges in 1900. By 1911, they were all gone, except for one in Philadelphia, okay? There were something like 12 all African-American medical colleges. By 1920, they were all gone. It's at this point that the medical profession becomes kind of a homogenous, all white male, East Coast, wealthy set of doctors. It's the image of medicine from this new era of science. And it's a very interesting kind of history, but essentially there's this dual edge. They're trying to set up standards and licensure. At the same time, they're trying to raise the status of the profession by getting rid of all the riffraff who they considered ruining the image of doctors. And there were certain major corporations, major figures like the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Foundation, which basically sponsored this basic purge of the medical field of women and African Americans and poor kids. They're poor kids' colleges. There was no standardization. Some of the colleges went for 2 years. Some went for 6 months. Some, very few had a hospital associated with it, so there's no clinical experience with students. Most had no affiliation. Columbia Presbyterian, right next door to you, was in some sense a product of this system in which there was a Columbia College, right, medical college, that ultimately needed a hospital to get accreditation by the 1920s. And that's when they accredited, they kind of linked with Presbyterian in a very unholy and very problematic relationship that even exists to this day, where there's ambiguity as whether Columbia Presbyterian is one hospital, it's based, or is it a medical school that's kind of attached to a hospital. There are all sorts of interesting stories about that. But you're absolutely right. There was very little system of accrediting physicians, but also it also led to a very diverse group of physicians, all who had roots, real roots in the community. They weren't just an elite that handed down knowledge and served people from above. They're literally parts of communities, and that's how they got their practice. That's how they developed their income. So there's it's a dual set of problems. But you got me started, Jay. I gotta back off of this right now, but I'll come back next week for the lecture too. I'm sorry. But here's the kind of problem that let me just go back to this one. They started seeing themselves, this is from 1920, right? Basically, they were being trained to think of a hospital not so much as a charity that lost money and just cared for people, but as a kind of factory production, factory production. Just as Ford Motor Company knew how many motors it produced, how many transmissions, chassis, finished cars it had, the hospital had to know all this kind of information, right? Kind of to mimic the new efficiency model of institutions that saw themselves as more corporate. They were borrowing volumes, right, from industry. They're trying to see how to make their institutions more efficient because they were piling up lots of bills. Here's a report, charts, reports. And the problem became, how do you balance out the needs of patients against the financial needs of these growing institutions, right? Which kind of creates this distance. We're seeing a slow kind of removal of the institution from the very communities that got them going. Presbyterian Hospital does not have much of a connection with the Presbyterian community necessarily anymore, which in some sense is a good thing, right? Because it serves a wider variety of people. Mount Sinai has probably less of a community relationship to the Jewish community than it once had, et cetera, et cetera. The Lutheran hospitals, they all begin to try to see themselves as efficiency operations, providing one kind of care to, the ideology was to everyone, but the reality was to those who could ultimately pay and keep the institutions going.
Sorry. Excuse my interruptions, Steve. It's 7:30.
Oh God, I'm going to
a few more items, and it's really interesting. I wish we could have a class just working on this, but Steve, I mean, like, please, I just feel we should, move the agenda.
Yeah, let me just wrap it up, okay? Because I'll skip to the slides. This is a problem with historians. They start talking and they don't stop. So I apologize. But when you think about the problems of why there's distrust in the community, or why this institution that should be serving you all seems to at times fail you, you have to understand that history in which it's always had a dual motive. One is to provide great medical care and seeing itself as a scientific institution. The other one, which is driven by money and driven by who can pay and how our reimbursement systems work, that lead to kind of ambivalence within the institution. Not among the faculty. I think the faculty are perfectly involved, but within the institutional structure that basically is foisted a lot of the responsibility for failure, right, on communities and not taking responsibility on itself. So I just want, I'm sorry for going on like this. I apologize. And I'm stopping here because I don't even want to go into the slide. I'll talk.
Well, you almost see some of this come full circle. I mean, look at the closing of Harlem Hospital. You know, that was the premier hospital in Philadelphia, and all of a sudden it's gone.
Right, it's gone.
A lot of these institutions won't be able to make it because either they didn't affiliate with the right groups or they didn't structure their services so that they could get rid of ER, OBGYN, and all the things that aren't profitable.
Right, right. So I just want to remind you, when we think about what the problem is, there's going to be a lot of discussion of why didn't people get vaccinated or why don't they wear masks? A lot of it has to do with this history of distrust that kind of comes out of this long history. And I'll stop here. I apologize for going on like that.
This is incredibly fascinating. I hope that you forward a list of your books to Steve so that we could look through them and continue studying what you're studying. My background was public health, so I feel like I've gone back about 40 years.
Yeah, you know, this is important for public health people to understand. That's not just resistance from stupid people in the community who don't want to do the right thing. It really comes out of a long history of distrust and distance that goes back to Tuskegee, goes back to, there's a whole other set of slides I'm not showing you, but a whole history of this tension between medical care and public health and the communities they're ostensibly there to serve. So it's a long, long history, and some of it may be relevant to all of you. So I'll stop here and shut up. Thanks.
All right, well, Professor, I want to thank you very much. And, you know, it's not the way we do our usual meetings, but it's an interesting change to put things into perspective. And appreciate the fact that we.
This will warn you off ever inviting a historian again. Okay.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, it's the first time we've done it in 20 years, so we probably won't do it again for another 20.
Okay.
I think, Steve, what's really important about this is that we are coming full circle. We are coming to a point where public health needs are not being addressed. Like even the thing that you sent out today about the containerization. I mean, we're a dirty city getting dirtier. And we aren't focusing on the needs of how to prevent certain diseases that are easily preventable if we knew how to contain our garbage and knew how to clean up our streets and that kind of stuff. So I think this is perfectly timed.
Great, thanks. I'm going to head off and let you go do your business, and I apologize for taking so much time. Thanks.
Right, well, if you want to forward the PowerPoint, I can share.
Sure. Okay.
I can share it with the committee members.
Oh, I could. This is literally a very, very. Yeah, I'm happy to. I'll forward it to you, Steve. Okay. It's just basically a few things I put together this morning. Just to, you know, I thought I'd go through them in 3 minutes, of course, and it never happens that way. But I'll forward it to you.
Well,
okay.
Look, I think that some of us would want to spend some more time looking it over
Sure.
when we have the time for it. So I appreciate it, and I hope that you'll stay in touch with us. And
thanks for the invitation. It's like old home week for me, just coming back to the community.
All right. Well, when you want to go back to 900 Riverside Drive and revisit the bodega on the corner, please let us know.
I certainly will. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye, guys.
All right. Take care. Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right. So we've been joined by at least one of our new committee members, Jacob Bannis. Welcome. I thought I saw Luis Cruz, but he may have joined us briefly and then dropped off.
The invite that I had his name automatically attached to it. I'm not sure why.
Oh, that you mean? Hold it. I have Luis Cruz raising his hand. So Luis, you are with us?
You have to move him from the attendees list to the panelists.
He is a panelist.
Not on my screen, he's not.
He can still speak, but I already moved him over. He has to acknowledge it from his side. Remember, people
Okay.
have to select the button.
Thank you so much. Now I'm
Okay, great. All right, so now, but both of our new committee members are, have been initiated and are full-fledged members of the committee. But I thank you for joining us. We all welcome you, and we're glad to have some fresh blood on the committee. And Catherine Diaz, I believe, has also joined us. Is Catherine with us? Let us saw Catherine.
I don't see Catherine here.
Well, I think she may have dropped out. All right. Well, all right. Let's move along on the agenda. So let's go back now to our Department of Health representative, our borough liaison, Manhattan Community Liaison, Pauline Ferrante. Pauline, you have a report for us?
Yes, hello everyone, Pauline from the Health Department. So I do have some information to share. So Steve asked me to come with some monkeypox and some polio information. So I will be happy to just give some updates to everybody. And then also I'm happy to take any questions. Again, I'm a generalist. I am not a medical professional for the new members of the board. So any super technical or super medical questions, I'm happy to take back to the professionals over at the Health Department and provide an answer to you in a timely manner. So again, I'm here to do my best and try to provide information to everyone here that will be useful for the community. So let me just start really quickly with polio. So as we know, the state actually discovered polio in Wastewater. And then it started up in Rockland County, I believe. And then sorry, my child just started coughing uncontrollably. Okay, apologies. And so the city then provided wastewater samples to the state, and in which we did find also within the city signs of polio. So poliovirus in the wastewater. So this is extremely concerning to us because, of course, we thought that polio was, eradicated, or at least due to the fact that many people had the vaccine, it wasn't something that we would have to be concerned about. However, as we all know, in recent years, the vaccination rate for children across the country, but also in New York City, have dropped. And so, this is prior to COVID-19. This has been a steady sort of, decrease in people getting their children vaccinated in recent years. And so it's really important that we continue to educate folks that vaccines are extremely effective, 99% effective against paralytic polio. It's a 3-dose course. And we really want to continue to educate those who may have not had their children vaccinated. So again, information is being shared with communities and with community partners, pediatricians' offices. We are doing everything we can to make sure that those who are unvaccinated get vaccinated immediately. And if you are an adult who didn't receive all 3 doses, we recommend that you go and get your final dosage. It doesn't matter how long time has passed, but we do recommend that adults who may have not gotten the full 3-course a vaccine, that you go ahead and do that, so you can speak to your medical professional to set up your vaccine to finalize your course. So that's the update on polio. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to provide answers as best as I can. And then moving on to monkeypox. So I know, yes.
Before we drop polio,
Yep.
and we have a couple of committee members who have questions. Before I turn it over to them, I'm just wondering, do we have statistics that would indicate the extent to which people in our community might be vaccinated or might not be? Is there any kind of a zip code breakdown when it comes to polio vaccines?
So I don't believe that there is. I don't know if it's up on our website yet, but based on my notes here, the citywide rate for children between the ages of 6 months to 5 years is only 86%. So that means almost 14% of children in this age group have not received the minimum 3 doses of the vaccine. And in some zip codes, that rate is above 40%. So it looks as though we do have some zip code based information, but I don't know whether or not we have that broken down, if that's, readily available to the public at this point. But I'm happy to go back and just ask our data people. Of course, we collect immunization records for the city. So, parents can always reach out to the health department to get their children's immunization records. So I'm sure we have this information. I just don't know whether or not it's broken down and made public or made available on our website just yet.
All right, see, but you'll get back to us on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But did I understand what you just said is if someone is not sure that they've received the full course of 3 doses, they can check with the health department that you would have my records, you would know whether or not I received the vaccine years and years ago?
I don't know if we would have your records. I don't know whether or not it's like more of a recent thing where people can get their immunization records, but I do know that people who may have lost their children's vaccination records, they could reach out to the health department to see if we have that information on file. So let me just double check our website really quick so I can share that information with everyone. And then if there are any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them at the same time.
Okay, so let me call on Sally Fisher.
I take it that polio is not a required vaccination for school entry.
I thought it was.
Yeah, I thought it
but
was.
I believe that there are certain religious exemptions that apply to all vaccines. So to my understanding, the polio vaccine is required for school.
Is there a way that maybe next meeting you could bring us a list of all required vaccines?
Sure, yes,
great.
yes, that's definitely something I can do.
Or just send it to me beforehand and I'll send it around.
Yeah, absolutely. Required vaccines. Yep.
Thank you.
Is that Sally? Is that it, Sally?
Yeah, unless you want to hear that my dad had polio.
Oh.
No.
He recovered completely.
Okay. Oh, he did recover?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Only when he
Okay.
got very tired would he limp a little bit. But yes, he got it in medical school, actually.
Wow. My high school girlfriend had polio, but that's another story. So Tanya.
Yeah, Pauline, I wanted to find out about how this got into the system. Did you address, I don't think I heard you address it, like how is it possible that something that should be every child, I mean, should be covered, vaccinated against polio, why that would even end up in our wastewater system?
Right. So polio is contagious. And so when a certain, when not a lot of people, and as noted, more people have become sort of against vaccines in recent years, not vaccinating their children with the regularly recommended vaccines. We've been seeing an increase in measles and mumps, for example, and then now polio. So diseases that we thought were no longer a concern because of the efficacy of vaccines are now resurfacing because many people have chosen not to vaccinate themselves and their children against these diseases that we, we're hoping would not have to deal with for any period of time. But so we are seeing a resurgence in certain diseases because of the lack of vaccinations and because, of course, we live in a densely populated community and city. What happens is that so we do test wastewater for a variety of things, and when the state realized that upstate samples showed the polio virus, then they asked the city to provide city water samples as well, so wastewater samples. And since we were working with DEP anyway on the COVID, just testing wastewater for COVID, it was something that we could do. And so we provided, samples. And then we saw that within the city, there were also indication of the virus in the city's wastewater. So it just means that when people, utilize the bathroom, whatever sheds in the waste shows up in the samples. And that's a helpful indicator to let the city and public health agencies know sort of what's happening in the city. But we cannot utilize that information to sort of narrow down location because, of course, all of our wastewater just goes to one place.
Yeah, that's fine. I guess overall, I guess I'm just, there has to be a way, there should be a way to mandate these things. I mean, people can have all their little reservations all they want, but when, people can end up with, potentially crippling, deadly disease that should, for various reasons. And I just don't think that is, that potential for exposure is fair. And I just wonder, where does it stop as far as people's so-called rights and their, ability to just decide that they don't want to do certain things. And where is the boundary between that and protecting public health? I just don't feel that is something that people should be allowed to do, unless there is some doctor or medical proven something that by this child or this particular specific child getting this particular vaccine is going to be adversely, going to cause some potential fatal, reaction or something. There should be no reason that people should not be able to decide, I am not going to vaccinate either myself or my child or whatever children I'm in charge of against something that can harm other people. I mean, what is being done to address that? I mean, I just think that sometimes it's the same with COVID. We coddle people too much. And it's like, I don't care about your rights. If you're going to get someone, you can kill someone else or cause someone to get sick with a deadly, potentially deadly disease. I just don't see. And I just wonder, what is the city doing to address that? Because we need to draw the line. I don't care about your rights. I'm going to say that. I don't care about your little rights when you get to harm someone else or kill someone else. I do not care. Okay. So what are we doing about that?
But your right to get your own kid sick with a very serious disease, that's a hell of a right. I don't understand why you would want to expose your own child to diseases of this nature. It's the whole thing.
I totally agree. And, the health department, of course, as an agency is very, very strongly, in favor of vaccines. We do believe in vaccines. The science is there. I think, the city does require, so I did pull up the DOE requirements for the vaccination schedule for school-age children, and the polio vaccine is there. It's on the list and it requires full compliance. But again, as mentioned, there are religious exemptions and other exemptions that are allowed under the law to, for people to exclude or to opt out of providing or getting their children vaccinated. Also, there's a population of children who are homeschooled. There are other, private schools who may not require the same vaccine. So there are lots of different layers as to, how people can go around getting their children vaccinated. So I think the most important thing we can do is continue to educate people that vaccines are safe, that vaccines are effective. I think, in recent years, it was a lot of the conversation about vaccines equaling, autism or causing autism. That has been debunked, but unfortunately, the prevailing thought in some circles is that it happens. So again, it's all about education, and we are doing our very best to make sure that populations in which we're seeing low vaccination uptake, that we're there, that we're providing accurate information. But there is that. There are pockets of the population who really are just very steadfast against vaccines.
Steve, last thing, and I'm done. This is a joke, but my religion is opposed to paying taxes and student loans. So can I just not pay that? So I would like to file paperwork that says that
I'd like to convert to your religion,
taxes.
Tanya.
Thank you. I'll make it up. I'll make up a religion. I'm going to do that tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you. I'll be quiet.
Thanks, Tanya.
But this is actually a very serious point. And I thought the state legislature a year or two ago actually passed a law eliminating the religious exemptions. I thought those were no longer allowed.
For measles.
Only for measles?
That believe so. Correct.
Well, it should apply across the board.
I think there was something to do with the measles vaccine and the lineage of how it was created, and that it did use stem cells or fetal cells. And then that was a reason why there were certain religious exemptions. That's no longer the case. But I think that might be the reason. I can look into this a little further, but I do remember the conversation about why certain religious organizations did not want people to utilize vaccines based on that concern.
Right, but could you check into whether the state law that eliminated religious exemptions, whether it was limited to only the measles vaccine? I thought it covered all of them, but I could be wrong.
I will definitely look into that. I don't know for sure, so I will get back to you.
And I say if it didn't cover all of them, then I think we need a new law that would remove the religious exemptions across the board. I mean, it's just insane at this day and age that people should be contracting polio and other diseases because of a lack of willingness. I mean, I don't know what the heck the religious grounds could be to expose your child to polio and other diseases. OC,
so first, not paying taxes doesn't kill anyone. So let's I know you meant this as a joke, but it's just thinking about it. It doesn't kill anyone.
Okay, but listen,
not being vaccinated does.
Right.
So my question is, do other parents in the class, that when they send the kids, have the right to know that there is another cat that was not vaccinated? I want to know who is that? I'm assuming it's the state that can, regulate something like that. But I want to know if the parents has the right to know if there are kids that didn't get vaccinated for polio or whatever. I mean, whatever other diseases that, because the way I look at that, that's murder. That's absolutely murder. I mean, like, even it's not intended to kill me specifically, but that's murder. And so if people have the right not to pay taxes and fight it, nobody get killed. So who cares? It's between you and the, and your federal government. I feel that, I'm sure there is something in the books in terms of vaccination, just because it's not just like a flu or things of that nature. It's far more serious because the consequences of that is that we are getting killed. The one that are being, that get vaccinated, technically, potentially can be harmed. So why we don't have, what's the answer for that? Do parents have the right to know that there is a kid in the class that didn't get vaccinated without naming the names?
They do not.
I don't know, but it looks like Sally does know. She says that they do not. But I'm happy to look into that also. And maybe I can get more information about, sort of what the DOE regulations are. I'll reach out to DOE and I'll reach out to our school health folks, just to get you guys sort of a full, like a holistic view of what the schools require, what the laws are around that, and what the parental rights are for school-age children.
All right.
And
Also have
my
to assume
other
that,
question-
also
my-
have to assume that will fall onto the HIPAA, the privacy of the patient. Norms.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
I didn't say name names. All
Yeah.
I said is that there is a kid in the class that did not get vaccinated.
Does
We're
not-
not naming names,
It
but
doesn't, it doesn't matter. You're still signalizing someone within that class, so it still falls under the HIPAA.
Yep.
yeah, but that's going to affect me if I'm dead. So I just feel like there is. Steve, that this is fundamentally wrong.
But who
Because
knows
somebody has the right to get sick and potentially make me sick. And, if I'm dead, I'll be really pissed. But this person has the right. And where is my right?
All right. Well, Pauline is going to look into it further, and this discussion, I guess, will be continued at our next.
Okay, I have one other quick question, Pauline, about the COVID.
No, we're not up to COVID. We're not up.
No, well, wait a minute. This was related to a question that you stopped me before, so I'm asking it now. Do kids need proof of COVID vaccine to go to school?
At this point, no.
Okay.
All right.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
Two questions, actually. One is about the monkeypox vaccine. I see we now have a Harlem location. Are there plans to have any other locations for vaccinations further north of Harlem?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. And I know that the board also had a resolution around access to the vaccines. So, of course, it is based on availability, and I'm like, kind of deja vu from COVID times. But again, we are trying our best to make sure that access is equitable. But much like when COVID vaccine first came out, it's based on, what is logistically, what we're capable and how we're able to staff up locations. And so wherever there were locations that were city owned or city run, those were the easiest to staff up first and to provide the vaccinations there. I don't know whether or not there's going to be one specifically for Washington Heights and Inwood, but we do know that as more vaccines become available and more, private practitioners are able to get it, then hopefully more community-based healthcare providers are able to provide the vaccine. But at this point, it's still very limited to the spaces that are city owned.
Okay. And then my other question, which is probably.
Hold it, Sally, before we drop that point. We do have, the District Health Center at 168th and Broadway. We do have a city operated site within our community, as well as the site at Dykeman and Nagel, which is under Health and Hospitals auspices. But I would hope that at least we could do it at 168th Street.
I definitely, I did ask around, and what I was told was just based on the availability of vaccines, it was important to keep like the number of doses sort of in general areas so that people could make the appointments and be able to go, and it was more organized in that fashion. But again, you know, I totally understand, and this is something that, again, you know, for debriefing for COVID, this is something that many people have brought up. You know, the fact that access in Washington Heights and Inwood has been, you know, a concern. So I will definitely bring this back again to our folks here just to see sort of what the plans are as more doses become available, whether or not we're able to expand into, you know, our 168th Street location, or to provide more community-based, you know, targeted vaccinations.
Yeah, I would appreciate it if you would bring it back and let them know that this is a strong point for us, that we do feel as though we get overlooked quite often, and we would hope that as more monkeypox vaccines become available, that they become available directly within our community. I mean,
Yeah.
Jacob, would you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that summarizes a lot of what we said a couple months ago when we passed a resolution asking for that exactly.
All right, Bernie.
I have a broader question, which is, has there been any discussion about bringing healthcare back into the health department and away from HHC? Because it seems like a lot of the issues that we've had logistically working through COVID, now even worse with monkeypox, is a function of having the expertise for pandemics, epidemics, outbreaks, et cetera, housed in an agency that doesn't really have control over the resources. And I just wonder, now that you have a new health commissioner, now that we have a new mayor, has there been any discussion about bringing healthcare back into the health department?
Yeah, I mean, if there were, I'm not privy to them at this point, but I am more than happy to inquire within the agency. I mean, I'm sure there are conversations, because I don't believe that the health department was exactly happy about having a lot of that, you know, moved from our agency to H&H. I mean, we love our partner agencies, but I think, you know, there were some concerns raised then. I'm sure there were concerns that are being raised currently, but I don't know for sure. So I will bring that back, and I'll definitely ask around.
All right, and before we forget, and what can you report to us now on the city's current efforts to combat COVID-19?
So based on all of our efforts on monkeypox and polio, I think what we are still encouraging, especially since the recent news that people are no longer required to wear masks on public transportation, is that we are still encouraging everybody. It's this education campaign that, you know, all the prevention guidance that we have been pushing since the beginning, you know, still stand, that we are asking everyone to continue to get boosted if you're eligible. We are seeing childhood vaccination rates not quite as high as we would like. So again, reminding people that if you have a child 6 months and older, they're eligible to receive a COVID vaccine, and encouraging people to go ahead and do that, you know, and making sure that vaccines are available to people, boosters are available. So all of that work hasn't stopped. I think it's just now we're facing, you know, more pushback, you know, with the not having to wear masks on public transportation, and the fact that people really weren't doing it while it was required anyway. But just really having people understand, I think there is COVID fatigue. People are tired of hearing about it. You know, people feel like life has moved on. But like you mentioned earlier, Steve, there are still cases, and in some locations of the city, the case rates are still pretty high. And so we want to continue messaging, and you know, we need your help also to be able to share this information with the community. But again, you know, vaccines are the most important way to protect yourselves and others. And so getting that information out to folks and having people get vaccinated and get boosted is sort of our main priority.
And are we still providing vaccines at community sites? I haven't really seen too much publicity on that lately.
Yeah, we still are providing vaccines at community sites. They are all available on the vaccine finder. And it looks like there are, vaccines offered that we don't see the same, no vaccines available at this location like we did before. So it looks like they are readily available. Pfizer and Moderna did come out with a multivariant vaccine or a booster that sort of covers Omicron and other variants. So that's something that I think people should know about as well. But again, I think, people are a little bit tired of hearing about it and moved on to other topics of interest. But, we are doing our best to try to make sure that people don't forget that they need to keep updated on their vaccines. And also to remind people that, in the 2 years that they were home and couldn't go out, that they go to their healthcare provider and make sure their children are up to date on their vaccine schedules, because a lot of kids have fallen behind on their vaccines, their regularly scheduled vaccines. And so reminding parents that they need to go and get their kids back on track with their other vaccines as well.
But a few months back, we had vans that were replaced at various locations throughout the community. I don't know if that's still the case.
So let me check in with the test and trace folks, because they were the ones who managed all the vans. I don't know whether or not, complaints started to come in that they're taking up too much space on the streets. I know that a lot of complaints came around the testing tents that were on the streets, the pop-up testing locations. And so I don't know if that sort of trickled into like the vaccine vans as well. But we did receive a lot of complaints about, the testing tents taking up prime locations, the prime real estate in certain locations. And so I don't know if the vans were sort of caught up in that as well. But I'll check in with H&H to see whether or not they have vaccines for COVID, the vans available still.
And to be fair, I seem to have lost my contact at Test and Trace. If maybe you can find out for me who I should be dealing with. The last Manhattan Borough liaison, I guess, quit, and I haven't been able to get in touch with anyone else over there.
Sure, will do. I will get you a contact ASAP.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
All right, Sally, you still have a question? Is that a no? Jay Mason?
Yeah, I read yesterday in the city that the health department has a 19.1% vacancy rate in employees. And I'd like to know how this affects the information available to us and the services provided by the department.
Yeah, yes, it greatly impacts, day-to-day operations. I know for certain our pest control team has been trying to hire for a very long time. The process with, just the approvals with OMB and just, a variety of reasons. It's hard to get people onboarded. And by the time we're ready to onboard them, they've gotten tired, like eligible candidates have gotten tired and said, I found another job. And that has been something that has been ongoing for a couple of years, but made worse by COVID. And it does impact all of our programs. I know that we wanted to expand a lot of other programs that do outreach, for example, street outreach teams to work on behavioral mental health concerns. Those teams haven't been fully staffed up. And so, yeah, it really impacts how the health department, I'm sure other agencies, having the lack of employees really does impact our work. And it really, unfortunately, impacts the health of New Yorkers, because we could utilize so many more hands on deck to be out in the community, sharing information in a way that makes sense and is targeted. But we just don't have that capacity. So, anything the board can do to help us would be fantastic. I know budget consultations are coming up. But yeah, the inability to staff and to provide full teams in all of our programs has greatly impacted a lot of our work. But we are trying our best and doing the best with what we have.
Well, we're certainly glad that you're still with us. Tanya, do you have another question?
Yeah. My question is about the, because you were talking about, really trying to still encourage masks, on public transportation. How are you reconciling your efforts with the MTA that seems to have a different message in their marketing, which essentially it says, do you, boo, so I don't know what that's supposed to be, but that's essentially what they say. It doesn't matter how you wear it, just do you. And so how have you all had conversation with MTA about messaging? Because it seems very, very divergent from what you were trying to communicate.
Yeah, I don't know if there have been specific conversations with the MTA about messaging now that the mask mandate has been sort of repealed or it's no longer necessary to wear a mask in public transportation. But I guess we are appealing to the individual to say, please continue wearing your face covering when you're in public, especially if you're on public transportation where, now it's getting even more crowded as people are returning back to, in-office work or in-person meetings and things. And so we definitely are trying to appeal to individuals to make sure that they continue following all of the prevention guidance that we have, because hand washing is still very important. Staying home if you're sick or getting tested when you're sick is still extremely important. So all of these things we are now, trying to make sure that people continue to get this information. I'm sorry, my child is calling. 1 second. So sorry about that.
Oh, no, no reason.
Yeah, and so again, we really it's kind of an uphill battle, and it was even when the masks were still required that we were seeing a lot of people not following that guidance, and it was really upsetting. So we really just any way we can get this information out and really appeal to individuals to continue doing that, I think, is our goal. But I don't know if there is some larger plan to get the MTA to continue encouraging it, even though it's no longer required.
All right. Well, I think we should probably move on at this point. We're running behind.
Can I just add one note, Steve? Which is Pauline mentioned our budget priorities. That is what we discuss next month. So anything you can come.
But we're going to be discussing it a little bit later on at this meeting, and finalizing our list. But Pauline,
we would love your wish list, Pauline.
Okay.
But let me just ask along those lines, Pauline, the 19.1% vacancy rate. I mean, what that suggests to me is that you have the funding to fill those lines, but for whatever reason, you're having difficulty actually recruiting the people or hiring them. It's not. It doesn't seem to be a funding issue, or is it?
No, it's not a funding issue. To my understanding, it's not a funding issue. It's just the amount of time that it takes to approve people. There were hiring freezes for a little bit because of the pandemic. And so I think a lot of reasons as to why, people have left the agency, in recent months. Many people have left, maybe due to fatigue as well. But yeah, there are lots of reasons, but I don't believe that funding is one of those reasons.
Right. Yeah, and what I understand is some people leave because they want to be able to work remotely, and they don't really have an option to do that working for the city at this point. That's for some people, that's a choice they want to make. Right. All right, so let's move along. Thank you very much, Pauline, once again.
Thank you.
Next up is from New York Presbyterian Hospital, Julio Batista, Government and Community Affairs Liaison.
Thank you, Steve. Hope everyone had a great summer. Great to be back having our meetings. I'll start up with the COVID update. I guess we've been discussing here, the MTA has dropped its mask mandate. I guess they see less of a threat from COVID these days. I'd just like to reiterate, however, that the hospital and other healthcare settings, the masking mandate is still in place. So if you're going to visit the hospital, one of the clinics, we still require you to wear a mask for your protection and those of our patients. In terms of our numbers, I do not have campus specific, but our numbers continue to hover around 250. That's across the hospital settings. Again, those numbers of 250, it's a bit deceiving because not all those patients came to the hospital seeking treatment because of COVID, but actually came in for other reasons. And as we do test everyone. And upon coming for other procedures or other medical concerns, discover that that they had COVID. So that still continues to be the case. We continue our vaccination at the Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital. We had the vaccination in the ground floor. I believe during the summer or a month ago, Community Board 12 did do an e-blast with a QR code where you could just scan it and schedule an appointment right there through your phone. No need to to call anyone, but just very convenient. Hit the QR code and you can schedule the appointment. Now, we also talked about or highlighted the fact that the FDA has approved a Omicron sort of vaccine, which they say would cover or should cover folks for a year or so. So this may look like it's going to be similar to the flu shots, which is recommended that you get it yearly. So that rollout has begun, but we are waiting for full state guidance for us to proceed with that. There have been some inquiries already of folks in the community who would like to get that vaccine. And once that happens, we will be supporting them and getting an appointment. And if you know of anyone that likewise would like support in getting that new booster, we will certainly facilitate that. Finally, on the COVID front, I'm pleased to report that we supported a group to get a grant to provide COVID information and other health information to the indigenous community. Some of you may have noticed, and you can certainly notice that on Sundays when you go to churches, that we have a growing indigenous population from Mexico and other areas of Central America, South America. It's a community that remains somewhat isolated. So we're fortunate to partner with an organization called Coalición Mexicana or Coalition Mexican Coalition that will be working on outreaching to these communities up in Washington Heights and Inwood. They actually are based in the South Bronx, doing a lot of work there and do some stuff as well in Brooklyn. So this will be perhaps a good group for this committee to invite and hear from them. I think it's important because when we talked about the vaccination rates being lower in our community, certainly this is one of those communities that unfortunately have not stepped out of the shadows to receive services. So we're hoping that will be helpful in addressing that. When we talked about the vaccine, the flu season is approaching. We are working to ensure that we try to vaccinate, seniors and those who would like to get their flu shots. We have two events coming up. One is in in the Bronx at St. Gabriel's Church, which is on October 7th from 10 to 1 p.m. And then we're hosting another event on October 27th from 10 to 1 p.m. That we're doing in collaboration with Hebrew Tabernacle. And we certainly would like this committee and the board support in trying to get the word out to get people to come in and get their flu shots. It's important for that to happen as well. And then finally, I'd just like to mention that, we do also have a crisis around the asylum seekers who've trying to get search for a better life. And of course, are being put in buses like cattle and shipped to different areas, to Washington, D.C. and New York. So we're trying to support those asylum seekers as well. We held an event on September 2nd with Reverend Barrios and Holywood Church. We have volunteers that were there, provided some screenings, some vaccinations to 80 migrants. We're still talking about how do we expand that to support the migrant community. We are in touch with the mayor's office now to see how we could support them in terms of, the students who go to District 6, ensuring that they have their physical exams, their vaccinations, and we will certainly do that. As part of the event Holy Root, I'd like to also thank Columbia. They provided us with their the dental van, and so dental services was also provided at that event. And then finally, with regard to that, our ACN is working to collect new and gently used clothes, shoes, and new toiletries, working with Word Up Bookstore. And, our ACN team will be picking those items up and delivering it to Word Up on Monday, so that, again, we will support our migrant, who's seeking asylum here in New York. That is is what I have for now, Steve.
All right, let me just a few quick questions before I recognize Jay. So at the moment, you're saying that there are 250 cases within the NYP system. I believe in the past you've told us that I forget what percentage you told us in the past.
It's usually, it's usually, usually I think it's about 50, less than 50% really are uptown. But I will give you, I'll shoot you an email with the Columbia Island Hospital numbers.
Yeah, please. Please remember to do that. And in terms of the vaccines, is there any reason that the community board shouldn't do that email blast every week?
No, not at all. I will encourage the board to do that as often as they can.
Yeah, I would like to have the community board send it out every single week, reminding people that they can get vaccinated at Morgan Stanley. And
Absolutely.
did you ever develop a flyer in Spanish?
No, they have not. They have not translated it, and they have not redone the QR code so that it could go into Spanish. I think that maybe the difficulties is a QR code. But I do encourage the board to send out the version that they usually sent out a month ago.
All right. Well, I'm certainly going to ask that it be done again. But my other suggestion is I think there should be signage all around the hospital campus. I think there should be signs posted so that people who are walking by, people who are going into the hospital, that know that they can get these vaccines in Morgan Stanley. I think the hospital itself has got to do some more publicity to get the word out. I mean, there are signs up, amazing things are happening here or whatever. I'd like to see a sign up that says, come in and get vaccinated. I mean, I think the most important message the hospital can send out right now is you should help protect your life and the life of people in your family and get vaccinated and come on in and get the vaccine. So I would appreciate if you would bring back the message that we would we would like to see we would like to see the hospital do more to advertise the fact that the vaccine is available, that people can come in and get it.
I would take that back, but I would also encourage the board likewise to follow that same model and get the word out, perhaps with the notices that they send out, but the need to get vaccinated.
No. I think the board. I think we have got to do more. I don't think the community board has done enough, and but I certainly think the hospital has got to do more. And I mean, I also have this idea that that the hospital should tell its own employees that they should, they should commission every single employee to go out there and spread the word and talk. They should talk to their neighbors, their relatives, and encourage them to come in and get vaccinated. It's really it's a life or death situation, and we have to do more to get the people in our community vaccinated. I mean, it's insane to me. It's insane that we're 10 or more percentage points behind the rest of the city. There are thousands of people who have not been vaccinated. I would like to invite that the Mexican Coalition group. So if you could get me the contact information, I certainly would like to invite them to our next meeting.
Sure, I'll provide you the information. I mean, one of the things that that at least that I do and some of my colleagues also do is, we have meetings, and during the meetings we do try to plug in a word or two about getting people more conscious about let them know that we need to get vaccinated and get our community vaccinated. So we try to use at least a moment or so of the meeting to run a little PSA that we would just ask people to do that. And I think maybe that's something that maybe the board prior to all its meetings likewise make that PSA notice to all the participants.
I agree with you. I agree. I think we should have been doing it all along, and I regret the fact that we haven't been doing it. But when I continue to see these numbers and see that we're behind the rest of the city, way behind the rest of Manhattan, and that tens of thousands of our residents are not getting vaccinated, it's become more and more troubling.
Yeah, no, I agree, and unfortunately, we live in an era where social media plays such a big role, and unfortunately, some folks in our community tend to believe what they hear, read, and don't really follow the fact. And unfortunately, because of that, it's going to be awfully difficult for us to really get to the threshold of that trying to vaccinate everyone in our community, because social media has gotten such a strong hold on people that unfortunately that is reality.
All right. Well, let me. I think we're going to be discussing this probably at every single one of our meetings. But I would really like to see both the community board and the hospital itself be much more aggressive in getting the word out and trying to get community leaders, get celebrities. I mean, the hospital has connections with Mariana Rivera and all sorts of celebrities. Let's get them to do PSAs. Let's get them to go out in front and try to encourage people to get vaccinated. Jay Mazer, you have a question? Jay?
Mr. Mazer.
I'm unmuted now. Sorry to hold you up. Actually, first of all, since I'm usually complaining about things the hospital does, I wanted to say it's a really good thing, the outreach you've done for both the indigenous community and for asylum seekers who may be located in our community or not. So I think those are really good things. But I'm still concerned with the closure of the psych unit at Allen Hospital. I'm actually also concerned with the fact that Allen Hospital was licensed for 300 beds and has never had them. And I think the whole board has expressed their concern with the closure of the hot psych unit. And Ebenezer Smith informs me that our concerns have been forwarded to the State Department of Health, Governor Hochul's office, and so on. And we're hoping for action from the state agencies to move this question forward if the hospital is reluctant to do it. And switching subjects entirely, I don't know if you keep these statistics, but what about people who are admitted to the hospital COVID-free and acquire COVID in the hospital? Does that happen, and how often does it happen?
I appreciate the question, Jay. I don't know the answer to that. I could certainly inquire with our folks at the hospital to see if we have any stats in terms of the reversal of patients without COVID who ended up getting COVID. So I'll find out and circle back with Steve on the answer. Just let you know, when it comes to mental health, I understand everyone's concern and appreciate the advocacy and we're trying to, in terms of the community and especially big thanks to Dr. Warren Ng, who most of you know, has worked to expand our outpatient mental health services, collaborating with community groups. He has helped identify staff that when referrals for staffing when some of the community-based centers were doing searches and couldn't find anyone. So he has been instrumental in securing some psychiatrists to some community groups. Warren and our team at the hospital has worked very closely with Charlie Corliss and keeping the mental health services committee, which is a collaborative of different mental health service providers in this community and East Harlem, West Harlem, together, so they continue to meet and advocate and and address some of those concerns. Now, this is not something, this is something that we feel very passionate about, and Warren clearly has been pushing for this collaborative to work together. And it isn't something that always favors us, because they Charlie Corliss and that group for NMA did follow the community board's lead, did submit a letter supporting the community board's resolution on the beds at the Allen Hospital. And it's something that we continuously address with that group, the issue of those beds, and finding ways that we can mitigate that, so the services can still continue to be provided to our community.
Julio, I just wanted to emphasize the fact that a couple of months ago, I had a doctor's appointment at Allen. And so I was a little early, and I asked the security guards, and they informed me that the psych unit is totally unused, and it's only there for emergency purposes. So it's beginning to sound to me like the hospital is hoping for a future emergency so they don't have to reopen it to its original purpose. And that's not an attack on you.
No,
But
I understand.
I just wanted to bring the focus back to the vacant section. I presume it gets cleaned. I don't know. Maybe it's collecting dust, but it's totally unused.
Yeah. Well, my understanding, Jade, and thank you for that, is that, there was when the outbreak happened, the hospital, because of state mandate, the hospital did invest a significant amount of money to convert that into a med-surg unit. I understand that still continues to be the case, but I will certainly look into the current usage of it and see how often and how often it's used as a med-surg unit.
According to security guards, it isn't.
Just as a follow-up question, if you could also get an estimate from them of what it would take to convert it from med-surg back to psych in terms of time frame.
Sure. I mean, I remember I don't recall the exact figure, but to convert to a med-surg unit was quite substantial. It was in the millions of dollars. So I'll try to figure out, or I'll ask, the Allen folks, for a conversion and what that would cost.
Okay. And I had a separate question.
But before we get off this one, I tell you, I have to believe that the hospital was reimbursed for that cost as part of the federal COVID-19 funding or special funding that became available to the hospitals to provide services for COVID-19. I don't think the hospital had to dig into its endowment or whatever in order to do that work. And I think I would think that the feds would also then reimburse the hospital for returning it to its original purpose. So I think this particular argument, maybe doesn't carry that much water. I mean, of course they invested a lot of money, and of course it's going to, in the event, it's going to cost a lot to return it to its original intended purpose. But it's not like a major loss to the hospital.
Well, and I'm sure you know better than anyone, Steve, that getting reimbursed is easier said than done. The hospital still has a lot of reimbursement that has not received from the federal government. So I'm not sure whether this falls in line with that. But I wish that reimbursement would be much easier than one thinks.
All right. Sally, did I cut you off?
I had a question about the asylum seekers. A lot of them started school today. And I'm just curious whether there's a role that maybe some of your school-based clinics could play in getting these kids vaccinated, making sure that they're up to date on, whatever else they should have by this point in time and don't have. But I think it's probably a perfect setting. And I don't mean to put it on you. I mean, I think that all schools should be looking at that. But how do we isolate that population? We know that they're in greater need of vaccinations, et cetera, because of where they came from.
Yeah.
But I think there's a unique role that you guys could play.
Yeah, thank you, Sally. We are. Our clinics are playing a role. They are vaccinating, and not only vaccinating, but doing a full physical on some of these the children. Reaching out to School District 6 and letting them know that we are available to support the asylum seekers all the students that are going to District 6 and providing them with those physicals, providing them with the vaccine to ensure that they start their school year in health, and that whatever services they need, that we'll be able to provide. So we are reaching out to District 6 on that.
Great, thank you so much.
Do we know how many of the asylum seekers are in our community at this point?
I don't have a number. I did reach out to Miosotis, so you know, who's the Deputy Commissioner for Immigrant Affairs, to see if there's a number, and told her that, you know, we would be happy to work with them in terms of providing support. So there is a significant amount, as I mentioned, you know, for just this small event at the Holy Root, we did see 80. So
I'm sorry, you took what?
we saw 80. So 80 were seen.
And when you were at Holy Root, 80.
Asylum seekers.
And to your knowledge, we've been able to provide them with places to live?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, we're not involved with the housing aspect of it, but
Okay.
you know, as you know, I mean, that's been a significant challenge for the city to find hotels, rooms, and other accommodations for them. You know, and it will continue to be a greater challenge as the numbers of asylum seekers increase as they bust in on a regular basis.
Right.
I think you're going to find the information anecdotally. I know that Mark Levine posted that there were dozens of asylum seekers that started school at PS 145 today. So I think,
145?
yeah, I don't know where that is.
I don't know. I don't think that's ours.
Yeah.
OC, you have a question?
Yeah, actually, it's a comment in regards to advertising the vaccines. Yes, clearly Community Board 12 need to advertise more, but Community Board 12 is not not in a healthcare and not healthcare institution. So I feel that it's up to the hospital to make flyers in Spanish and potentially maybe other languages. And I don't know why it wasn't done until now. It feels like that had to be done like long time ago. So it wasn't. And with that, I want to say, Julio, you may want to bring back to your team that an idea to have vaccination tents outside the schools. So when the parents drop off, they see that there are vaccination tent, you know, there is a vaccine tent that available when they pick up the kids from school, right before they pick them up, they can get the vaccine. So it's, you know, and if you change from like a few days for each school, you may reach more people. It's just that you have to look at it as you have to go to the people. You cannot ask people to come to you, because you're not going to reach as many people, individual that need the vaccines, unless you are going to the people where they are and offer that over there. And so I don't know why it wasn't done, but I just feel that that's a great idea.
So, you know, we've had, and we continue to do outreach. We've had hundreds of meetings and presentations around vaccine hesitation. We continue to do that. If anybody on this meeting know of any groups that would like a presentation and talk about vaccines, our clinicians are available to do that. We've printed over 40,000 leaflets talking about the vaccines, asking them to get vaccinated, giving them numbers to call. So, you know, when we talk about flyers, you know, as I mentioned, we've done over 40,000 of those. We distributed those through bodegas, supermarkets, left them at restaurants throughout the community. We partnered with senior centers to do that, and also with community-based organizations like Team Dreamers, FYI, to distribute those throughout the community. So, you know, I think, yes, more could be done, but likewise, we've done a lot as well to get the word out into the community.
I'm not saying that you didn't do anything. What I want to add that you produced 40,000 flyers, but our district has roughly 210, 220,000 residents. So I mean, not everyone need the flyers, I get it, but you have to be in the public domain and public eyes ongoing. You can't just do like a few events and then rest, because that's not going to work. And that's why I feel going to the schools when the kids, I mean, when parents are there in the morning and then coming back in the afternoon to pick the kids up, that's an opportunity. Give them time to come back with the vaccination card and have a vaccine. And I think it's something that's worth trying.
That's one of the reasons OCI suggested working through the kids to get to the families. And I also think that the city needs to step up their incentive reimbursement thing, because for some reason money talks. I think flyers get lost.
All right. Let's thank you, Julio. Let's move on to our report from Columbia University Irving Medical Center. Janelle Edwards, Community Affairs Associate.
Hi, good evening, CB12. My apologies for not being on camera right now. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. First of all, glad to see everyone after summer break. Hope you had a chance to enjoy, and welcome to the new Health and Environment Committee members. As Steve mentioned, my name is Janelle. As it's late, I'm going to try and be as brief as possible. So I have a few updates for you this evening. This past summer, we had a chance of partnership with Inwood Artworks Film Al Fresco and hosted 2 screenings, Coming to America and Encanto at Haven Plaza. These events also included other programming such as puppet shows, some tabling with local organizations, and even a swing dance class to provide more interesting programming for the community. It was free and open to the public. And we're looking to do more events on Haven Plaza, so please stay tuned for that. We also started the Seniors Aim High program at the Armory. It's designed for seniors from the local communities of Washington Heights, Inwood, Harlem, and the South Bronx to be more active, engage with peers, and get some health-based information. So the seniors every Tuesday have a 60-minute workout in the Armory, followed by a healthy living conversations with doctors from the internal medicine department. And it's an opportunity for them to exercise, socialize, and address some health concerns. On August 2nd, we had the pleasure of welcoming Tanya and a few other members of the community to our project medical education. Due to the pandemic, we had a 2-year hiatus, but we were glad that we were able to host people on campus and in person, just to give them a walk through a day in the life of not living, but rather studying on the health science campus. So Julio also joined us, and I hope that if you haven't had a chance to do so as yet, please feel free to reach out to Steve, and he'll get in touch with me or Ross for future project medical educations. On September 17, these are just a few events we have coming up. YCAP is hosting a brain health fair also in the plaza. It's happening Saturday, September 17th from 11 to 4 p.m. It's going to be a health and wellness fair that's focused specifically on promoting brain health. And if you know of a community organization that is interested in tabling, there is still space to do so. I sent a link to the registration form in the report, but if need be, you can just have Steve follow up with me and I will get that information to the appropriate person. Tomorrow, September 9, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., Public Safety is hosting a community shred fest and electronics destruction. That's going to be right in front of our Hammer building, which is at 701 West 168th Street, right on the corner by the plaza. Feel free to share the information. It will be happening rain or shine. Electronics and obviously paper will be accepted, and everything will be free. And the final event is on Saturday, October 8th from 1 to 4 p.m. It's the return of Northern Manhattan Neighbors Day. So members of Washington Heights and Inwood will be eligible for complimentary tickets for a Columbia versus Wagner football game. Again, it's also included in the report, the link to redeeming a ticket and along with a phone number. We ask that all attendees be vaccinated and that you're able to provide proof of entry and your address when getting your ticket. So it's a lot of fun. I'll be there, Ross, as well, wearing our Lions gear, and we hope to see some of you. And that's it for me.
All right, so this report, Janelle was good enough to write up this report, and I forwarded it to all of the committee members at some point before the meeting. So you should all have a copy of it, and should all have the ability to use the links. Before I call on Sally, Janelle, could you just go over for us what the current COVID policy is on the Columbia campus?
Sure, I definitely can do that. So back on May 12th, the university phased out its testing program that was specifically for the campus community. So, for the past 2.5 years, I have been able to give you numbers of the amount of cases that we have on campus along not just Morningside, but the entire campus and obviously the medical center campus. So those numbers are currently no longer available because they are no longer testing on campus. They did provide an official update on COVID-19 guidance, and they're still encouraging masking. All employees and students are required to have vaccinations, and the vaccination rates continue to remain incredibly high, but they are no longer testing on campus. They're remaining mindful that COVID-19 is still very present in our community, and we'll be watching and monitoring the situation. The most recent updates, if you are interested in looking at it on your own, can be found at the COVID website, which is covid19.columbia.edu.
Okay, so all faculty, students, and staff are still required to be vaccinated.
Yes. Yes.
Do they have to submit proof of the vaccination before the school term begins?
Well, you are required to do so. We do have an entry app that we use where you have to do your attestation. So you are able to submit prior to registering for class and coming actually on campus your vaccination information, and that's where it's verified.
All right, so before you even come onto campus, you submit the proof through the website?
Yes, you can do it on a website or via an app. Yes.
Or through an app. Okay. Sally, you have a question? Sally? Come back, Sally.
Okay, yeah, I'm here. I actually have a tip for Janelle. If you're thinking that
Sure.
if you might want to turn Haven Plaza yellow for the spring, there's a project run by New Yorkers for Parks. It's ny4p.org, where they distribute free daffodil bulbs, as many as you want, throughout the city. It started with 9/11 to basically turn the city yellow. And you might want, you'll have a lot of planters down there, but you might want to look into that project as a way to get something for free that will beautify the city.
Thank you.
Well, I tell you, in honor of Ukraine, they should also distribute blue flowers.
They should just, okay. Do you have a recommended blue flower?
If you have, Janelle, if you have any questions, you should feel free to call me and I can help work you through the process.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it, Sally.
All right, very good. All right, any other questions for Janelle? Seeing none, thank you very much, Janelle.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Now, but I should warn you that I am going to call upon Tanya shortly later on in the meeting for her to give her to give the insider account of what it was like to spend the whole day at the medical center. So you may want to stick around for that.
Okay.
Actually, why don't we do that now? Diane, do you mind if we take a few minutes? Tanya, you want to give your report about what it was like to participate in
Sure.
Project Medical Education?
Sure. Well, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's, first of all, I think it's a very important program for people in the community to really understand, one of our stakeholders, one of our partners in the community, and what they do every day, and some of the challenges they face, what they do, and the services they provide for the good of medicine, for the good of science, and how that benefits us as people who would benefit from that medical research. And so, it was a fun time, and we went, basically heard from people from various departments within, from psychiatry to the nursing school. We were able to see some of the research they're doing in terms of with fish that should help to figure out ways that people, for people who might need organ transplants, to figure out how organs rejuvenate, and using the fish, where apparently if they cut off a limb or cut off parts of it, it grows back. And so we were able to see the work they were doing around that, and how that could be vitally important to, for the advancement in that area. We were able to participate in a simulated baby delivery, with a very eerie lifelike woman and child. And it was very real. The doll moved, screamed. It was so real. And it was amazing because we basically recreated everything that would happen in that moment. And I don't know how people do it. It was just a lot going on. And but it was a very fun time. People were able to volunteer to deliver the baby. And we, learned about, like I said, all the various different departments and the work that different departments are doing, the technology they use. We went to the dental school even, and were able to hear about their work, including the van that I think Julio mentioned earlier, that was made available to, I think, the Asylum Seekers. And so it was a very good time. And I also enjoyed meeting other, community leaders and others from who participated in the program. And they were from varied backgrounds, from policy people to people who ran nonprofit organizations and others. And I think it's very important that we understand what Columbia does and what the needs are, so that we can make, I think for me as a board member, we can make more informed and nuanced decisions with a better understanding of what it is that the institution has to contend with, and what their needs are, and the work that they're doing, and how we can help to support that work in the community. But it was fun. I had a great time. I couldn't think of anything more that we could, have done. It was very thorough. It was, we went to so many different departments and learned so many different things. Met so many different people who were leading the different departments. So it was an amazing program. I highly recommend it.
All right. So if there are any other committee members who are interested in participating, you should let us know, and we can try to get you signed up for next year.
And it was a great part. It was a great dinner too. It was a great reception afterwards.
Oh,
So it was also wonderful.
Yeah, don't forget the free dinner. No lunch, only dinner?
No, we
There's
had
lunch as
breakfast,
well.
lunch, and dinner. We had breakfast, lunch, and, and lunch.
You got 3 whole meals out of the deal. Oh, forget
Absolutely.
forget everything else. You got 3 meals.
No, we also got to meet other people. We got to meet some medical students when we were having lunch, and they were at our tables, and so we got to talk to them. So it was really good, and we got to see Ross and his regalia, for the graduation.
Oh,
So it was.
I don't even want to know what that means. Okay, very good.
The graduation garb.
All right, very good. Thank you for that report.
Thank you.
So Diane Ashley from the representing MJHS and its local affiliate, the Isabella Geriatric Center.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the new committee members. Isabella during the summer saw a boost in COVID activity like the rest of the city did. Happily, that has very much stabilized. On Tuesday, when I got back from vacation, I asked for latest stats. There are currently no residents who are positive for COVID and on state mandated isolation. So our number is 0. We continue to educate and offer vaccinations. Hopefully our numbers are helping. 91% of our residents have received 2 vaccinations. Actually, as many as 81% have received 3 vaccinations. We're a little over 50% on the 4th vax. Our staff are all in compliance with DOH vaccination requirements. And so we monitor that closely, obviously. All visitors continue to be screened and COVID tested required in advance of seeing the loved one. We offer that in the lobby area before folks go upstairs. As mentioned by Julio earlier, masks are still required in the nursing home setting, so nothing has really changed for the medical facilities. And so I think we continue to educate and vaccinate. We hold vaccination clinics once a week to make it easier for our staff. We are always offering it to our residents and encouraging their family members. We are not allowed to mandate 100% compliance. During the summer, we did reactivate our volunteer and summer youth program, bringing, I think there were 16 summer youth employees, program students, which joined us. It kicked off 7/11. We also collaborated with PS 187 in Washington Heights for an intergenerational music program that took place via Zoom on a weekly basis. And for several months, we had 4 of our residents working with 1st and 2nd graders to create a special music project to perform for their peers, families, and teachers. And that's obviously those last 2 projects a win-win, both for our residents and the kids that participated. The hospice fellows are back working at Isabella. That's part of an accredited Albert Einstein College of Medicine and Montefiore Medical Center and MJHS Hospice and Palliative Care Program. It's part of their requirement for accreditation as part of the Council for Graduate Medical Education. And we are currently providing the opportunity for 3 to 4 fellows each year to participate in clinical rotations for hospice. Nursing rotation partnerships have been reinstated at Isabella. These are also community collaborations. We have a CNA rotation going with George Washington High School, a CNA program with the Technical Institute of America, a nurse practitioner rotation with Columbia University Nurse Practitioner Program. And we are also, as part of that, working with Rory Meyer College of Nursing through NYU. We are not, while we have expanded these activities, we are not yet able to invite back large community groups or host on our campus. And that's my update. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, well, let me just go over some of these numbers. So 91% of the residents have received 2 vaccinations.
Yes, sir.
81% have received 3, which means one of the boosters. And then more than 50% have received 2 boosters on top of the 2 vaccinations.
Yeah, it's actually 56% if you're looking for hard data.
Oh, good, very good, 56. All right, so that's that easily surpasses the rest of our community. Those are good numbers. But let me ask you, when you say that over the summer there was a boost in COVID cases, what are the numbers there?
I don't know the numbers. I just specifically just that we did see an increase. We report every day. We did see an increase in activity that's obviously stabilized. We have nobody on campus at the moment that is COVID positive.
And when you do have COVID cases, the people, I assume, or maybe I shouldn't assume, are the people being isolated?
Yes, sir. They are. It's a state mandated temporary isolation. So we follow those regs rigorously. And then as I don't remember how many days the state mandates, but we follow that. And then the resident returns back to their regular room and back to their normal life.
Once the COVID systems, I assume, have dissipated.
Well, actually, most of the residents who are testing positive are asymptomatic.
Oh.
But so it's really more about the state time period that somebody has to be isolated than it is the symptoms, because in most cases, I'm sure largely, and I'm hypothesizing here because I'm not a medical person, because so many of our residents are fully vaccinated, they're milder or asymptomatic.
Right. All right, very good. Jay, you have a question?
Yes. Actually, in the late winter to spring, about a 5 or 6 week period in 2020, 98 residents of Isabella died. And when I raised this question before, I was told that we'll get information on that when the state investigates. The Attorney General's report, as I recall, had nothing specific on Isabella at all. And I haven't heard any results from a State Department of Health investigation, if in fact one occurred. So I'd like whatever information you can provide us on the results of that putative investigation. And who shares responsibility for those numerous deaths in such a short period of time. I understand further that Isabella wasn't really prepared for a pandemic, and in fact made requests to the community for donations of protective equipment and masks. And my question around that question is, why wasn't Isabella prepared? And any information you could provide, I'm sure the whole committee would be grateful to hear.
So I think I should probably get very specific answers, or as specific answers as I can, and come back to the committee. I will say that we were investigated rather thoroughly, and that as I think people, pretty much every Department of Health and I think you referred to some other Inspector General. I don't know. I don't have the exact in front of me. I will just tell you that we opened our doors and we were fully investigated. As I think has become clear, there was some state level activity in terms of how reporting was handled. We were honest, we were direct, we reported the data. We reported the data honestly, and we reported the data accurately. We are one of the largest nursing homes in the state. That's a 705-bed nursing home. And every single death matters and every single person matters. But if you looked at the percentages of lives lost relative to many smaller nursing homes, it was actually a much smaller percentage. That does not take away from the horror of lives being lost and people losing their loved ones. I wouldn't for a moment, but the request for resources when COVID first came to New York, there was a lot about getting help to the nursing homes, and a lot of the state's assistance went to the hospitals. So the biggest challenge for us, in my recollection, and again, I will go back, is that we did not have testing. That getting testing was delayed at the nursing home level. It was delayed for us. And yes, everybody was, we never, put it this way, our staff never went without the proper protective gear. We did whatever we needed to do to make sure our staff always had proper protective gear, and they always did.
Diane, to my recollection, Isabella actually did not accurately report, at least to us, the deaths of nursing home residents in that period. We were generally informed that the figure was as many as 65, not 98. So to my recollection, that wasn't the case. I'm not saying they weren't accurately recorded. I'm only talking about the information that was presented to this committee.
I can't speak to the specific time period. It is possible that there were points at which the state told us how they wanted us to report. And it is possible, Jay, that when the reporting was done to this committee, that it was done in a way that was consistent with how the state wanted us to report. I'm not hiding behind anything other than to say we accurately reported.
Is what happened. Yeah. What you said is clearly what happened.
Yeah.
That's part of Cuomo's cover-up of the number of deaths in the COVID crisis. That the Department of Health as well participated in that cover-up, as I recall.
I don't know about the Department of Health. All I know is that that we were asked to report the data in certain ways. There was a time period that was a 2 or 3 week time period where we were asked to report the data differently 3 different times, and the numbers would go up with those new reportings. And so it is entirely possible that that's what occurred. There is no point in time where we intentionally reported inaccurate data to this committee.
I'm not sure of that, by the way. You actually weren't here then, so you can't speak about in great detail. But like I said, I don't believe that that was our experience. And it's really a moot point now. We're all in agreement about what happened. And the main concern I have, and the committee would have, would be the actual results of those inspections and who did them.
All right, well, if I understand what Diane said earlier, she's going to go back and check. And
Yeah, I'm gonna see what information I can get and share with you guys, and I will share whatever I'm able to share. But the general thesis is that there was no smoking gun.
All right, so to be continued next month. All right, thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you all.
All right, next on the agenda was to be and we're running at almost 9:20, was to be, we can have maybe a quick discussion. We quickly run down and have some initial comments about our budget priority list. Let me see if I can post it. Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. All right. I'm not good enough at this.
You trying to share your screen? Oh,
Yeah.
you got it.
Well, this is no good. Are you now looking at all of my emails?
Yes, we do.
Oh, that's no good. Oh, God.
Should we just table it?
Yes. How do I get out of this?
Stop sharing. Say stop sharing. Stop sharing.
All right, that was a mess. All right, well, let me quickly run down here. Our number one expense budget priority for fiscal year 23, which is the current fiscal year that runs until next June 30th, was to expand mental health services in the community, especially for seniors and others whose mental health and social engagement have been adversely impacted by COVID-19. That was the committee's number one priority, and the full community board also voted it as its number one priority. I assume we would want to keep that item.
Yes.
Our number two priority was to open a full-time COVID-19 vaccination site in Washington Heights with an annex or other regular presence in Inwood. That was the number three priority for the board as a whole.
Should we include monkeypox?
All
Call it a vaccination site to include COVID and other developing strains.
right, I think that's a good suggestion. What was your language just now? And other developing what?
Strains. I don't know if that's a good word. I'll defer to Julio on that.
Developing viruses.
All right, but I do want to single out monkeypox.
You do or you don't?
I do.
He does.
So
I had a long conversation with a neighbor who said it was a nightmare getting through the process. All the paperwork that has to be filled out. He finally got the treatment because the monkeypox was threatening to go close to his eye and he would have lost his vision. That's the only way they pushed through the medication.
Oh, God. All right, our number three priority was to increase trash basket collection on commercial streets in District 12, adding a second shift so that baskets are emptied more than once daily.
yes,
Well, I'd like to double check because I thought maybe the mayor announced that this was now going to be funded. So let's look into that.
And we should also look into how it impacts the monies that were allocated to the NYC cleanup initiative.
Well, that's a different issue. Oh yeah, okay, we could, yeah, maybe some of that money went towards trash basket collection as well. Okay, that's a good point. All right, our number 4 priority was to increase services to prevent and treat chronic diseases such as Alzheimer's, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, and hypertension, conditions that increase susceptibility to COVID-19 in our community. So that was our number 4. The board as a whole made it number 18. Seems to me that's still valid. Our number 5 and the board's number 12 was to increase staff to conduct regular noise enforcement, especially nighttime, air quality monitoring, and water quality testing in our community. Number 6 and the board's number 20 was to increase substance abuse services in our community, including opioid overdose prevention education and funding for syringe cleanups and collections. Our number 7, the board's number 45, was to increase HIV/AIDS prevention and treatment services and LGBTQ services in our community.
Steve?
Was that someone sneezing or was that a comment?
It wasn't me.
Steve?
Yeah.
Do you want to finish your thing? Because I have something, I sent you, I don't know if you got it, like the legislation that was passed about maternal health. And I know that they were looking at, some of those pieces of legislation dealt with, trying to get more doulas and training in terms of, to assist, because frankly, Black women are dying unnecessarily in childbirth and being neglected. And not only them, but also other women of color, but mainly Black women are dying. And as I mentioned, there is a documentary currently on Hulu called Aftershock that talks about this, but more of on a national perspective of Black women who have died because of, when being neglected. Even Serena Williams had to advocate for herself because they were going to kill her. So when she gave birth, so I don't know if where that could land, or if there's something that we could try to ask for, but I do think that, and it's good that the city council being now, having more Black women present, were able to advance some of this legislation. But I think the need for more doulas and others that who could help and assist would be ideal. Because I think it's unfair that that's happening, and it shouldn't be happening. That neglect should not be occurring, and it needs to be addressed. And
all right, well, let's review that material that you sent to us and see if we can find within there a budget-related item.
Okay.
And I tell you, it's not just a question. If I read the material that you sent correctly, it's not just a question that Black women are dying, but they're also suffering negative health effects or morbidity. There's not just mortality, but morbidity from childbirth. Our number 8 and the board's number 44 was to increase funding for education and outreach on recycling, reuse, and composting, as well as proper disposal of household garbage in our community. Our number 9, the board's number 25, was to increase pest control efforts to eliminate rats, cockroaches, et cetera, in our community. And I think what we just learned tonight from Pauline is that this is not simply a budget issue, but now is a question of being able to actually hire the necessary personnel, even with the funding that's available. Number 10 and the board's number 38 was to provide funding to ensure that all local public schools have multi-service health clinics with nurses and social workers. So those were our 10 expense budget items. We had 4 capital budget items. Our number 1 and the board's number 4 was to install green infrastructure, such as bioswales, to divert stormwater from the sewer system and address climate change issues in our community. Our number 2, or the board's number 12, was to construct a new garage for District 8, which is on the Upper East Side, and to relocate its trucks from our district as quickly as possible to comply with the charter mandate of co-terminality.
Isn't it in the making?
You know, they identified a site downtown several years ago, and I think that seems to be going nowhere. It doesn't seem to be happening, but we should double check on the status of that as well. Our number 3 and the board's number 9 was to expedite the replacement of old water mains and sewer lines in our community. And as you know, a lot of that work has taken place over the last couple of years. Our number 4, the board's number 14, was to provide additional garbage collection trucks and street sweepers with snow plows. So at next month's meeting, we'll take up any changes, any additional items that people want to add to that list, which we end up forwarding to the board as a whole, and then the board votes on all of the committee items, all of the items from the different committees, and on one at one time.
Steve, can we add an item right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, that's an expense item related to local law 97. I think we should ask the city to have workshops in our district to educate landlords about the local law 97 and the importance of implementing at least some of the items. And yeah.
Well, and tell us, what is local law 97?
Okay, local law 97 is the how did I say it? The retro commissioning, the reduce of carbon emission, or building with reduce reduction of carbon emission that emitted by buildings. Okay, and some of the things is just, for example, a few years ago, actually it was 2013, heating oil number 6 was discontinued. Number 4 will be discontinued in 2030, and they want people to move away from fossil fuel. And the city has a plan, the state actually has a plan to move away from all the fossil fuels altogether and towards electrification by 2050. So preparation for electrification is very complex. And if buildings don't start thinking about it now, they're going to end up in start paying fine to some of the items later on. So a lot of landlords are pushing not to do anything. And we are talking about buildings that are 25,000 feet or larger. And the majority of the buildings in our district are. And so I think it is important that the city will invest in workshops for landlords and to promote electrification, but starting with promoting phasing away number 6 oil and so forth.
Well, you mean number 4 at this point?
Oil number 4 will only discontinue in 2030, which is outrageous, but we're not getting there. Okay, so was
it number 2 that was already eliminated?
No, number 6.
Number 6 has been eliminated. So,
Right.
so then the goal is also to eliminate, once number 4 gets eliminated, is to also eliminate number 2.
I don't know, because the point is just that going to natural gas is not going to cut it, because after 2030, if you're running on natural gas, you're still going to pay fines because your building grade is not going to be, well, I shouldn't say that because it's a combination of items, but natural gas is not gonna help you eliminate fines.
But if you're talking about eliminating, phasing out the use of fossil fuels, and then number 2 has to be eliminated too.
That's correct. That's true. But at some point, right now,
Well, no, no, there is no date for eliminating number 2.
no.
Yeah.
There is only a date to eliminating number 4.
Number 4, right?
Yeah, and electrification, there is a date for that. And so we have to seriously think about it, because the use of fossil fuel is affecting the asthma rate in our district. Add to it the cars running on Highway 95, and all that together. So the city should absolutely invest in workshop for landlords and building superintendents. And anyone else that want to learn more about it in our district.
All right. So does local law 97 specify that that all existing buildings have to go to electrification?
No, no.
Only new buildings.
Okay, so they phased out natural gas, I think in any new development that after, I forget if it's 2024 or 2026, will not be able to have natural gas implemented as part of the heating system. Natural gas is going away too.
Well, or fuel oil.
And fuel oil eventually, but right now we're talking about new development. Any new development after 2024 or 2026, don't catch me on the year. I'm not 100% sure. Will not be able to have natural gas in the building. This is in preparation for electrification.
Okay, but at that point they would still be able to have number 2.
I'm not 100% sure.
All right.
It's something, but anyway, my point is just like, let's start with workshops and then.
Okay, got it. Sally.
But it's a good point. We should talk more about that.
Yes. Sally?
Yeah, I wondered if you wanted to bring in something like piloting a containerization program, given the article that Jim Berlin sent.
I think it's premature for us to do that at this point. I'd like to see what the EDC report recommends, but
Okay, and I guess not going to push for content if that won't change.
I mean, the only place where they're doing a pilot, I believe, in the Times Square area.
Okay.
They're not going to do anything else until they have this EDC study. But I'm trying to get some more information about what the timetable is for that.
Great, thank you.
All right. Any other comments on our budget priority list? All right, very good. Okay, under old business, I got the DEP service request reports for June, July, and August, but unfortunately I couldn't open them up. So I'll forward them to you as soon as I figure that out. On the street and cleanliness ratings, strangely enough, our streets and sidewalks were not rated in July, but in June. So the most recent report we have is for June. In June, our streets were rated as 91.1% acceptable, and the sidewalks were rated as 97.7% acceptable. The water main, gas main project that had been underway in Washington Heights, mostly east of Broadway, I believe in the 180s, has now been completed. And on recycling, I want to now go over the recycling statistics every month. In for the most recent figure, well, for fiscal year 21, which would have ended last June 30th, our district had a 16.5% diversion rate, which includes metal, glass, plastic, and paper. It's somewhat higher than districts 10 and 11, slightly below District 9 by 0.1%, and is, except for District 3, is below every other community in Manhattan, and was slightly less than fiscal year 20, where our diversion rate was 16.9%. If my memory is correct, I think at one point we might have been as high as 20%. So I don't think we're doing very well. And in the most recent month that's available, which is May, this last May, our diversion rate sank even lower to 15.4%, which is a reduction from a year before that, May of 2021, when our diversion rate was 16.1%. So we're not really doing great on recycling.
And that's only residential recycling, right? Because we're doing even worse on commercial.
This is only residential.
Do you think that that warrants putting something in about recycling education for both businesses and residents?
Well, these numbers are only for residents, and we do have, one of our budget priorities is to increase funding for education and outreach on recycling. So right now, that's our number 1 8 priority. You know, we might want to discuss next month. It's hard to say that anything else that comes before it should be put lower down on the list, but we may want to discuss that. Okay, that brings us to new business. So we did discuss a moment ago the article that was circulated about the city looking into a containerization policy for the collection of curbside garbage, recyclables, and compost. We will try to get some more information about that, and maybe a presentation by the Department of Sanitation. Is there any other new business?
Yes. I have 2 items of new business. One is a congratulations to O.C. Kaminer, who is Inwood Hill Park's latest natural areas volunteer. We call them navigators. She passed the program with flying colors.
I'm sorry.
And this Thursday, we're actually doing an international cleanup with a group called River Cleanup out of Belgium and Deutsche Bank. They're sending us 50 bankers, and we're cleaning up the Dykeman, along the Dykeman Pier, north and south of there. We're going to remove invasives, so it's going to be a great day, and it's a chance for OC to prove her mettle.
And tell me again, what was the recognition that was given to OC?
She's now a natural areas volunteer, and they abbreviate that by calling you a navigator. NAV caps IGATOR for Inwood Hill Park.
Is that through our Natural Areas Conservancy?
That's through your Super Stewards program.
Yeah.
With Jason Stein. Yep.
Okay. And the where are the bankers coming from again?
The bankers are coming from a group called River Cleanup out of Belgium and Deutsche Bank. 50 bankers.
50 bankers.
hmm
All right, well,
And it's their first time cleaning up a river in America. So
And Steve, I have an item too.
we get all these sort of weird requests these days.
yeah, all right, very good.
Steve, I have an item too. I have an item when you.
Yeah, go ahead, Tanya.
Yeah, so maybe you all are aware, because maybe you all got an email, and this is not specifically related to just this committee or anything like that. But there was a survey done at Teachers College at Columbia regarding diversity, issues around diversity when it comes to community boards and bias and things like that. And they're going to be presenting their preliminary results of that survey on Monday. And so I think they sent out, but our board is not, sending that information out to anybody. But so hopefully you were on a list or you received that email with the details of how to register. If you want to attend, you can attend in person or you can do it virtually. But I highly encourage this board members and our one member from the public who's still on this call, to really participate, to attend that, because these issues are very important. And I'm glad that this person is also a board member, but in another board somewhere else, who took this initiative on to survey and to look into issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion in boards, based on the problems that boards have been having. And hopefully, I highly encourage people to attend. This has impacted our board. It's impacted my life over the last 4.5 years greatly, to a degree that I can't even begin to describe. And it is a problem. And I hopefully that, by people bringing more illumination to this issue, there could be changes made to board process citywide, and more attention to actually figuring out ways to address these things and not just tell people to suck it up and deal with it because you're a volunteer. And so I highly encourage, everybody to attend. These are the things that also matter. I know these issues that we talk about every day and all, that we're even talking about this budget, those things are important. But this is important too, because if these things are happening internally, it prevents us as a board from really functioning at our highest level and as efficiently as we can, and having the leadership that we should have, but we discourage because of discrimination. And so I really, just hope that we give as much attention to these things as we do these issues that we talk about, which mean nothing if we can't function appropriately and if we are creating an environment that's unsafe. And so this won't obviously is not the end all and is not the definitive thing in terms of addressing this issue, but it's something. And hopefully it will be a beginning of more. I wrote about it in an op-ed, as some of you all know, and back in January about these same issues.
I don't think I saw anything about this.
I know, of course you didn't. Of course you wouldn't. And I when they interviewed me, I asked them. I said, how was this distributed? Because it just seemed like it didn't get to everybody. And I know our board didn't advertise it, and neither did it. So I got it secondhand from some forwarded email from somebody else,
but
telling me that this was happening and to contact them.
Well, are you talking now about the presentation?
The survey.
On Monday?
The survey and the the presentation I knew about, yes, but the survey I didn't at first. But I
was the announcement about the presentation, was that sent to us?
I got it because I participated in the so I was already on the list. But this is anybody could register. It's for the community boards and anyone else that's interested. I can forward it because we don't have chat. So I'll forward it to you, Steve, and you do as you will as chair, to get it out to the rest of your committee. But I can't.
Well, why don't you send it to you can send it to the committee members.
Oh yeah, I can do that. I just didn't want to know if you wanted me to do it, if you wanted me to send it to you and you do it. Okay, so I'll send.
Go ahead and do it because we don't know what you're talking about because I probably don't want to.
Okay.
Don't want to see.
And it's Monday. It's Monday evening at City Teachers College. It's Monday evening.
Send it to everybody so if people
Okay.
have the ability to, they can sign up for it.
Yeah, you can do Zoom too, so you don't have to come in person if you don't want to.
Well, that's even better. Okay.
Right.
All right. Sally, is that a new hand?
No, it's a very old hand.
Yes, I know that. Okay, so we're going to adjourn at.
No, I have an announcement.
Are we doing announcements now?
I don't know. You were going to adjourn, so I have to jump in. Okay, so textile recycling. If you can get to 45 Independence Avenue in the Bronx, they have textile recycling running in their farmers market every Sunday. 45 Independence Avenue. They take textile recycling every Sunday.
Okay, well you saw that I wrote to
I did. I saw that, but somebody else told me about this farmers market that the textile recycling is running there. I was like, okay. And I checked it out for myself, and it is a real textile recycling, except that it's not in our district. But I'm still announcing it just in case people would like to recycle textile.
So is that Fort Independence Avenue?
4545 Independence Avenue in the Bronx.
Right,
it's in Riverdale. It's very close.
All right, because I think there's also a Fort Independence, no?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
The address is definitely 4545.
Okay, very good. Okay. All right, any other announcements? Okay. It's 9:49 p.m. I think we lost one of our new members, but Luis Cruz stuck it out. Thank you, Luis. Hope you enjoyed the meeting. And hopefully Jacob will be rejoining us next month as well. Thank you all, and we'll be meeting again next month and firming up our budget priorities. I believe, Julio, can you confirm that we're going to get a presentation about the hospital's community needs assessment?
Now, I did have a conversation this afternoon with Andy to shore that up. He tells me that there may be a delay because we have not presented any of these findings to our board. So he's going to check to see whether, if we come to the committee and make a report out. So I'll get back to you on that, but
okay.
Hopefully it will happen.
All right. And Councilmember De La Rosa's office has agreed to make a presentation about the funding it's provided to various groups and to the Department of Sanitation through the City Council's New York City Cleanup Initiative. So that could actually dovetail perfectly with our discussion about one of our budget priorities.
And by the way, I forgot to mention, they are in the beginning stages of their participatory budgeting process. Today was the first of 8 events, assemblies that they're having. One is going to be on Zoom, but if you're interested in being part of participatory budgeting, I would get in touch with Carmen De La Rosa's office.
All right, our official adjournment time has now been changed to 9:51 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
See you next month.
Nice to see everybody. Thank you.
All right,
Bye.
Bye.